All right, chat. How we doing? We are long overdue for a discussion about OneDND. Turn the dang lights on. We're long overdue for a discussion about OneDND, which, for those of you that don't know, is the playtest material for the brand new edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Some are calling it 5.5, some are calling it the new 6th edition. Wizards is calling it OneDND. Hey, you're early? Yeah, I just want to get to it. I'm kind of excited. I wanted to get right into it. So we're doing that. I'm long overdue to discuss this. I want to stay on top of it because they're only giving us like 2 weeks to play test it before we start submitting feedback. So I want to get on top of it. And I want to talk about it. And I want to be informed because this is like the future of D&D, and I'm all about it. Brand new, not an edition. Yeah. So how we doing, chat? Now, it's likely that some of you probably know more about what's going on with this than I do. OneDND hype. All right, hype. Here we go. Read through it, sat down, wrote what I liked and disliked. Not a big fan. I'm on the fence so far. All right. Well, we're going to talk about it. We're going to break this down. We're going to find out tonight. How are you, Sam? I'm doing all right, bud. Excited to have a look at this playtest material. All right. So first up, I want to watch this. Actually, do we watch this video or do we read through this first? The video came out first. I feel like we should watch the video first and then talk about it. Seems like they don't want edition, just have a continuous evolving edition. I'm okay with that. Just keep revising the player's handbook. I'm okay with that. Everyone says D&D isn't a game you can win, but here we are. We've won D&D. Well done. All right, watch video first. All right, here we go.
A new unearthed arcana, but this is a big one. This has to do with the player's handbook.
We're gonna do 1.5.
That is coming out in a couple of years. So where do we begin? We begin with origins, right?
Appropriately enough, we begin at the beginning. And so this Unearthed Arcana is the first in what's going to be a series of Unearthed Arcana articles that come out every month or so over the course of not only the next year, but probably the next year and a half or so, where we're going to present different pieces of the player's handbook, but with brand new content, then also familiar content, but with new elements, updates, and this is the chance for D&D fans to let us know what they think, to really lend their voice to the chorus of D&D fans.
Nobody likes the name.
Really letting us know where they want us to go next with this game that many of us have been playing for decades, and so many people have been playing since the 5th edition Player's Handbook came out in 2014. And so, with this first one, we thought, why not start at the start? And that is figuring out where your character in D&D, where did they come from? And so when we say your character origin, that's what we're talking about. What in your backstory helped shape who you are and was formative for you before you became an adventurer? Your adventuring life is largely expressed by your character class. And so character classes we'll get to in some upcoming Unearthed Arcana articles. In this one, we're going to be looking at 3 main elements that together express who you were in the earliest stages of your life. And that is your character's race, your character's background, as well as whatever feat that you get as part of that background. Because yes, one of the new things here, which some of our recent D&D books have already signaled was coming, and many fans have already guessed coming, that everyone's background will now give them a first level feat. But we'll talk more about feats, I think, a little later in the video.
So to begin, since this is about origins, let's start with race.
So your character's race in D&D represents your ancestry in many ways. When you make your character, you decide, is your character a member of the human race or one of the game's fantastical races? Various race options have appeared in many of our books over the last 8 years. Now is our time, in this Unearthed Arcana, to revisit our old friends, the races that are in the Player's Handbook. And so here, we're going to be able to look at, all of us together as D&D fans, the latest versions of humans, elves, dwarves, and others. Many familiar aspects of those races are still here. Many of the traits that people have been using for the last 8 years, they're right here on the page. But then there are also new traits. And some of those traits that we've been all using in our characters have new options. great example of this. In the dwarf, you still have stone cunning. But now, a dwarf, as long as they're in contact with stone in some way, whether they're standing on it, touching it, dwarves now, a certain number of times per day, can give themselves tremor sense, meaning they can sense through the earth itself if there are creatures nearby, moving objects. We're really leaning into the mythic stories of each of the race options in the game and looking for ways to make them sort of the version truest to themselves. Like something that we would talk about while working on them is we want this dwarf to be the dwarfiest dwarf.
Right.
We want the elf to be the elfiest elf. And so we've been looking at ways of not only maintaining continuity with what sort of the general silhouette of that race option is in the 2014 Player's Handbook, but again, bring some new elements to the foreground. Give you some more fun things that you'll be able to do during play. So that's another element. People are going to see in the races that ones that maybe in the past didn't have an active ability, something they could do during play, now they might have one. And so the dwarf's tremor sense is an example of this. Now the dwarf has something that they can use that makes them feel dwarfy and will have usefulness in adventures, while also having some of the familiar traits that they had before. The resistance to poison, for instance.
Right.
Still here.
I love the narrative hook of that just because if you're a miner, if you are a tunnel digger, like in a war, you are extremely sensitive to vibrations.
Yes.
You're just ultra aware all the time. So that's perfect for that playable race.
Exactly. And you will get to see things like that in all of them, where we took something that was there before, and often it's just we turned up the volume. What can we do to this to make it even more fun? Give a new dimension of play for people as they play their dwarf, their halfling, their gnome, what have you. In some cases, there are also options where before there were none. One example I'm really excited about is if you play a tiefling, you now have several really interesting choices. Choices that we began exploring years ago in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and now lean into here in this UA for the Player's Handbook, and that is when you create a tiefling, you decide what your infernal legacy is. I'm sorry, your fiendish legacy. And one of those options is infernal, but your legacy also might be abyssal, or a new third option, which we're calling chthonic, which has to do, each of these options has to do with different lower planes. And so infernal means your legacy is connected to lawful evil planes. If you pick chthonic, it's neutral evil planes, and if you pick abyssal, chaotic evil planes. Now, of course, the tiefling's moral outlook is not connected to the sort of origin of their mystical powers, which are shaped, those powers, by this choice. So if you want the tiefling you have already in the 2014 Player's Handbook, choose the infernal legacy, and you're going to see you have the familiar abilities, although you have a little more now, because now, in addition to the magical abilities you had before, you now also have the firebolt cantrip, because you're going to be able to hurl fire thanks to the legacy that you have.
That's very much the fire and the pits and the flames are basically what evokes that type of setting for anything infernal.
Exactly. Whereas if you pick abyssal, you have a completely different set of spells that you have in you innately, and then also your damage resistance is different. So infernal tieflings have the resistance to fire that tieflings have in the 2014 Player's Handbook, whereas abyssal and chthonic tieflings have other damage resistances. This sort of structure of giving you choices that maybe you didn't have before is something you'll see in a variety of places, not only in this Unearthed Arcana, but in future ones as well. Now, there's another fun choice that tieflings will have that they didn't have before, and it's also a choice that humans have in this Unearthed Arcana, and that is their size. If you are a human or a tiefling, you're now going to be able to decide whether you are medium, as they are in the 2014 Player's Handbook, or small. Because first off, in the real world, there are humans who are small, and so we want to make sure that's now an option in the game as well. And when it comes to tieflings, we added that option because some of the game's iconic fiends are actually quite little.
Yeah.
and so we thought, how fun would it be to see more height variance in tieflings? A theme then that we carry over into a brand new race that is also in this Unearthed Arcana. Would you like to talk about this?
Yes, I would love to.
So
these are very unique.
Yes. So in this Unearthed Arcana, we introduce a race that we're calling the Ardlings. Ardlings are also a people of the Outer Planes, like tieflings, and like Aasimar, who appear in Monsters of the Multiverse. And Ardlings are associated with three different groups of upper planes. You'll see there's a parallelism here. Tieflings are associated with sort of the three main segments of the lower planes. Ardlings are associated with the three main segments of the upper planes. They can be small or medium, just like tieflings, and all of their abilities are themed around, the heavens and whatnot. But also visually, they are really going to stand out, because one thing that sets Ardlings apart from, say, their Aasimar cousins is they all have the face of an animal. And what we're doing here is we're really leaning into the fact that going all
Thank
the way
you,
back
Blunt.
to first edition, many of the game's Celestials don't actually look like angels. Many of the game's Celestials from the game's long history, and I'm thinking here of Gardenals, Hound Archons, many of the avatars of specific gods, many gods themselves in not only D&D's pantheons,
But general mythology.
yes, but also in human mythology, have the visages of animals. And so that is true of the Ardlings, where when you make one of these folk who can trace their lineages to the upper planes, you also decide what animal appearance you have, whether you're a bear or a lion or a cat or an eagle. That is going to make it so that when you're walking down the street, people are going to know there's something special about you. Especially when you then also temporarily sprout your spectral wings to go on short little bouts of flight. So this will also be the first time
We're going to
that
talk
we
about the crit
introduce
changes. Don't worry.
A race with limited flight
Right.
in the player's handbook.
Right, and we saw that in a previous UA as well. But yeah, this limited flight, because flight is an interesting thing.
Yes, and this flight definitely is just for little bouts because the Ardlings do not have physical wings all the time, but they can channel their connection to the.
We're going to talk about crits,
temporarily,
and he's going to talk about crits
wings that they use to maybe reach a hard to reach place. I like to imagine that some of them, especially with their animal features, might sometimes just use this ability to get that cat stranded up there in the tree.
Yeah, nothing nefarious.
Right. Although just as tieflings determine their own moral compasses, this is true of Ardlings as well. So just because grandma might have been from Mount Celestia doesn't mean your Ardling shares
He does
the
talk
moral
about
outlook of
crits.
that plane. So you could play a sinister Ardling, and I think it would be quite interesting to see.
I know a lot of you want to talk about crits. I'm just gonna have like a real quick look. He does talk about crits and how spells crit.
Inspiration and already has it, they can then give inspiration to somebody else. I think there's going to be a really fun sort of easy for people to say yes.
Yeah.
To say yes, I'm going to use my inspiration because it's likely more is coming right around the corner.
The getting a natural 20 thing is so exciting because that's such a cinematic moment or a great narrative moment of I've been very successful and now I have a little bit left over and you could roll another 20. You can keep going and going and going and just see a game where something like that happens. I mean the odds are not high, but they're higher now to see something kind of amazing at the table. Yeah, that's very fun. The critical hits have changed as well. Can you elaborate on that?
Here it is. Listen, chat.
We are experimenting in this Unearthed Arcana with a new take on the critical hit. So in addition to rolling a 20, now feeding you inspiration, whether it's an ability check, saving throw, or attack roll, we've now specified that if it's an attack roll and you roll a 20, it's also a critical hit as you would expect. But what's different here is it's only a critical hit if you were attacking with a weapon or an unarmed strike. Now, in most cases in our game, that was already the case in actual play. Because most spells in the game trigger saving throws rather than involving an attack roll, spells scoring critical hits was a more sort of rare occurrence than weapons scoring them. But we're exploring this option, and again, I really want to emphasize, this is a great example of a playtest giving us the chance to experiment with something.
Remember, this is not set in stone. This is playtest.
Exactly. Yeah. We want to see what does the community think and how does this play out for them? Because what we're really trying to do is carve out a clearer space for essentially spell operations on one side and weapon and unarmed strike operations on the other. And the critical hit was already confusing for a number of people because I've actually lost count over the last 8 years the number of times I've been asked by the community, can spells score a critical hit? So funnily, this experiment in this UA will function for many groups the way they were already playing, because many groups had doubt that spells could actually critical, even though they could.
Right.
And so now we're experimenting with, well, just what if they can't? And this is a function of weapon use and unarmed strike use, which then also allows for us to do greater clarity, because then there's not that fuzziness before of take the dice that were involved in the attack and roll them twice. No, now we zoom way in. It's take the weapon or the unarmed strikes dice and roll them a second time. Now, of course, people know that some people don't have dice for their unarmed strikes, but monks and others absolutely do, and we wanted to make sure this critical hit option was available for them, in addition to characters who rely more on weapons. Now, there's an additional nuance here. The way we have worded this experimental rule, it is only player characters who score critical hits. Now, I need to unpack that.
Well, it's kind.
So first, critical hits for monsters often play out in strange, unsatisfying, or terrifying ways, and I'll unpack those. First, they can be terrifying. Higher level, terrifying is fine. First level, terrifying can mean the character's gone. So crits are extremely dangerous at low levels for player characters. That bugbear critting your first level character might mean
that's it.
Your character is on their way to the grave.
Yeah.
But then other times, because of how a monster's damage expression is built, a monster critical hit can feel unsatisfying. And the DM might say there was a crit, but the math doesn't really deliver the punch that you were expecting when the DM said that. Also, because a lot of DMs use static damage, our crit roll where you're rolling a die a second time, there's friction between that rule and how monsters are actually designed. And then there's a further reason that we're experimenting with this, and that is monsters actually already have their own built-in crit-like mechanic, and that is the recharge mechanic. We use recharge abilities to deliver those scary, massive strikes.
Right.
Think of the Dragon's Breath weapon. When that happens, everyone is put on notice, and that is the scary moment. The DM decides when to use it. So the DM can make an informed decision when to crank up the difficulty in a battle. The DM has no control over a critical hit. Now, uncertainty is also fun because we like DMs being surprised, but that's where the recharge roll comes in, because the DM, once the DM decides to essentially press the things are going to get real button,
they get the button back.
they're not sure when they get the button back.
Yeah.
And so there is already this element of uncertainty purposefully built into the recharge mechanic. And so what we're exploring is this notion of really monsters don't need crits because they have crits in another form, and that is in recharge abilities. And those, the DM has a bit more control over, even though it's not total control, because again, once used, the DM doesn't know when it's coming back. That modicum of control is more in keeping with what we expect for a dungeon master. And so we're exploring the crit as it's essentially a special ability of player characters, of occasionally they score these surprisingly good hits that deal more damage than the weapon or unarmed strike would normally deal. This is a rule I am very keen to get feedback on, and hope people will try it out in their game, and we'll see where we go next once we get the feedback on it. Related to rolling the d20, there's also another significant thing in the rules glossary that I encourage people to take a look at, and that is we have decided to embrace how many groups actually play. And that is when you roll a 1 or a 20 for an ability check, saving throw, or attack roll,
right.
A 1 is an automatic failure.
Okay, we're going to stop there and address that. Critical hits. Okay, critical hits. Weapons and unarmed strikes are now the crits. Crits give inspiration. Spells no longer crits. Only PCs can crit. And monster abilities are now going to be focused on recharge. I'm okay with this. Assuming that they give more monsters more recharge abilities, I'm okay with this. Because this is kind of like, if every monster has a recharge ability, I'm really going to like that. I dislike all the crit changes. More than bite and claw, lol. Yeah. Because that's the thing. That's the thing. As someone who has never had a DM inspiration, I am okay with that 20. I've given you an inspiration, Midna. You got an inspiration in my game. Or you should have. I don't know. We might have to pull up the logs. No, you haven't. All right, we might have to pull up the logs. I'm pretty sure I gave you one in the early game. We might have to check the logs. Okay, weapons and unarmed strikes. No, I think I have. I failed Vada's pastry. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah, we normally get one for introducing yourselves. You're right. Okay, I'm okay with critical hits. I'm okay with monsters losing critical hits, assuming, depending on what they do with recharge. We really don't know. It's too early to comment on this. Losing spell criticals? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about losing spell criticals. I'm okay with it, I guess. I mean, honestly, the Paladin and Rogue crits are pretty insane. Actually, from the way this looks, it looks like Rogues will be able to keep it, but Paladins lose it. But so satisfying. Are we okay with Paladins losing crits? Losing smite crits? How do I feel about that? I thought Rogues would lose it too. It's possible. The Rogue sneak attack is a weapon. They already deal enough damage. I feel bad for spell crits. Well, it's like he said, most spells are saves anyway. Brings up a good point. I mean, there is Eldritch Blast and Firebolt and your regular Scorching Ray. I feel like it needs to be kept. I can think in general these changes are bad. My group likes deadlier games, so I'll wait and see the monsters. But I feel like it's just making characters even less likely to die. Won't someone think of the poor Hexadon? All right, I want to go back to where we left off, which was around here.
Moral outlook of that plane. So you could play a Sinister Ardling, and I think it would be quite interesting to see that in people's games in the years ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm already going to. I'm playing a bat Ardling 100%. You have unleashed my humanoid bat fantasy already unknowingly, so I'm very excited for this.
And I can't wait to find out if your bat Ardling is from the exalted, heavenly, or idyllic legacy.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, no, that will require some thought.
Yeah, and because just as in the Tiefling, that choice then gives your character different magical abilities themed to the sort of group of planes that your character's legacy is connected to.
Some of the races that is included right from the get is in the player's handbook for 2024, presumably, is the Orc.
So the Orc is another new race for the player's handbook that appears here, and people who have Monsters of the Multiverse will see this Orc is the Orc from that book. And we've decided that because for many, many years the Orc has been playable, it's long past time for the Orc to graduate to the player's handbook.
Right.
And
so many people play them.
Yes, and take their place next to this other cast of characters. So I'm excited that Orcs are now going to be there in the game's core rulebook.
But man, Tieflings got there first. We also have backgrounds, and backgrounds have become so much more important than they were before.
Yes,
Timestamp.
and not only more important, but also more customizable than they've ever been before.
And more narrative weight.
Yes.
Like this is an important fact. It's super important about your character.
Exactly. And this emphasis on narrative is something that people will also see glimmers of also back in the race section of the same UA, because something that we offer to players now officially, this is something people have been doing in their games for many years, in a sort of story space between your race choice and your background choice, we encourage you to consider the possibility that your character might have parents of different humanoid kinds. One parent might be a dwarf, the other one might be a halfling. One parent might be a human, and the other one might be an orc. Some of these pairings the game has embraced in the past. We're now opening it up so to encourage people to realize many pairings are possible, and when you do it,
I want to hear that again.
as you choose to be an orc possibility player, this on narrative is something that people will also see glimmers of also back in the race section of the same UA, because something that we offer to players now officially. This is something people have been doing in their games for many years. In a sort of story space between your race choice and your background choice, we encourage you to consider the possibility that your character might have parents of different humanoid kinds. One parent might be a dwarf, the other one might be a halfling. One parent might be a human, and the other one might be an orc. Some of these pairings the game has embraced in the past. We're now opening it up so to encourage people to realize many pairings are possible, and when you do it, what you do is you choose one of those, basically you choose the parent that gives your character your game traits,
Right.
but then you can mix together the visual qualities of the two to determine how your character looks. And so you have two options to draw from for the aesthetic of your character, and then again you choose which one is giving you your special traits, your character's size and speed, that sort of thing.
And like you said, players have been doing this for so long. Like my own wife plays a gnome, half goblin, a noblin.
Right.
Like this is very common. You just have to choose the stats that you want to go with.
Right, yeah. And so again, another example of us providing new ways of experiencing the game we're all already playing. So now let's go from that to then the backgrounds.
Yeah, let's get into the backgrounds.
And backgrounds are really exciting for me because of how we essentially deconstructed them into their component parts, examined each part, and then reassembled them. And so the first thing that people are going to see is that the default option now for your background is to build your own. In the 2014 Player's Handbook, we had a bunch of backgrounds you could choose from. And then we had a rule that said, if you want to customize a background, here's how you do it. Mm-hmm. We've essentially kind of reversed the priority order, where now the default is build your own background, and we tell you exactly how, or choose one of the sample backgrounds that we provide that were built using the rules that we just gave you for building a background. And so what those rules include are some choices for your character that can be very meaningful for you, not only in terms of your character's story, but also in terms of your character's abilities. Because, first off, speaking of abilities, one of your choices in background is where you're going to put a floating +2 and a +1 to your ability scores. People are already familiar who've been playing D&D with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, as well as some of our other recent books like Monsters of the Multiverse that allow you to have a +2 and a +1 that you decide where they go in your characters. So this is going to feel familiar, but what's different is now that we're working on revising the Player's Handbook itself, where those bonuses now live in this playtest material is in the background section.
And it makes sense because you've been doing this. This is your background. This is like the life that you have led.
Exactly.
This is why you are more dexterous. This is why you're stronger.
That is
because
interesting.
You lifted greatsword, like
Yes.
you were a soldier. You know, this kind of equates.
Exactly, because background is all about what have you been doing
Yeah.
for all the years before you became an adventurer. It has a meaningful effect on your character's stats. And now, if you choose one of the pre-made backgrounds, people will see we have chosen what those ability score bonuses are, connected to the story of the background. But if you use the default option, which is building your own, just as you can in Tasha's
Yeah,
Cauldron of
there's a
Everything,
Discord, one
you
second.
can put that +2 and that +1, or 3 +1s wherever you want, just as you can with Tasha's. But and the reason is build. Now, if you choose one of the pre-made backgrounds, people will see we have chosen what those ability score bonuses are, connected to the story of the background. But if you use the default option, which is building your own, just as you can in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, you can put that +2 and that +1, or 3 +1s wherever you want, just as you can with Tasha's. And the reason why we're doing it sort of both ways, where if you do build your own, you decide where they go, or if you choose a pre-made background, we decide where they go, because we also know there are many players who don't want to have to decide. And so if you just I pick soldier, soldier tells me to increase these two stats in this way, and then they're good to go. It's sort of the best of both worlds.
Well, and it illustrates the point very well.
Yes, and really many of the backgrounds that we provide are really just illustrations of how people can use the new background building system. So ability scores are a part of it.
Yeah, I
Just
fixed
like you do
Nightbot.
now, in the 2014 Player's Handbook, you'll also get 2 skill proficiencies, you get a tool proficiency, you get a language, you also get a starting package of equipment, and even in our deconstruction and rebuilding process, even all those equipment packages have been examined. Because we're embracing this build your own approach, one of the things we needed to do was make it so that all the backgrounds have equipment packages of the same value.
Yeah.
Because in the 2014 Player's Handbook, they didn't. And so now if people add up how the cost, they'll see, oh, all the backgrounds have equipment packages worth exactly 50 gold pieces.
Instead of just going for criminal or noble.
Right.
Right.
And one of the main reasons why we've done that is to empower this build your own approach.
Yeah.
So then the other thing you get in your background, and we touched on it earlier in our talk, and it is, in my mind, the most exciting new piece of background, and that is you also get a first level feat. So in that statement, there are a few things for me to unpack. First off, I just talked about a feat and gave it a level. That's critical, because people are going to see, not only in this Unearthed Arcana, but in the upcoming Unearthed Arcanas over the next year plus, they're going to see feats appearing, and every feat will have a level on it. The way to think of a feat is essentially a class feature that doesn't belong to a single class. And just as class features have levels, feats are now going to have levels.
That makes a lot of sense.
And so there are several reasons for this. One, because we're really embracing feats in certain parts of this playtest process, backgrounds being—
I don't mind level
the
restricted
main
feats.
parts of
I
the
don't
game where
either.
we're doing that.
I like it.
We want to make sure that feat selection is not overwhelming. And one way for us to make it so that it's not overwhelming is to break feats up into smaller groups. And one of those ways that we're doing that is with levels. So for instance, if something in the game tells you, go pick a first level feat, then you know immediately, well, then I can ignore all the feats in this book that are for 4th level, that are for 20th level, or any other level that might be on the feats. Instead, you can just focus in on the first level ones.
And this allows those universal traits that don't belong to any specific class to have a variance of power that feels like more in tune with your leveling up.
Exactly.
Like it allows you not to I'm just picking from the same pool of feats as I've always done. Like, no, you can get a feat that is much more strong.
Yeah, well, not only that, but also something people are going to see is that when you examine the first level feats in this Unearthed Arcana, if you're familiar with the feats that have been in the game in the last 8 years, some of them have, in addition to including some sort of special benefit, have often also included a +1 to one of your ability scores.
Right.
You'll notice reading this document, none of these feats have a +1 to an ability score. And that's intentional because that is actually one of the signs that you're looking at a first level feat. Because when you see some of the higher level feats in our upcoming Unearthed Arcanas, some of those feats will still have a +1 to a particular ability score. But again, one of the signs of a first level feat is they don't include that. And because first level feats are not meant to change your ability score, because when you're building your character, there are already other things that are manipulating your ability scores.
Right, those initial factors. Whereas when you move forward and you start hitting other levels, you are faced with do I increase my ability stats or?
I want to make a note here, chat. I want to know if you choose If you choose a first level feat at higher levels, do you get the ASI? Or do you get an ASI?
Or do I go with a feat?
Right.
And this kind of softens that as well, of like, well, you're still getting a benefit with some of these feats.
Well, you're not only getting a benefit, but it's a benefit your character didn't have before.
Right, yeah.
This is a pure addition that we're providing now for everybody, and we have that in mind as we decide what qualifies as a first level feat and what doesn't. Basically, anything that's going to dramatically increase character power in some way, people are not going to see as a first level feat. That is the domain of higher level feats, where the game's math can handle adjustments to raw power. Most first level feats are about increasing a character's versatility and speaking to different key backstories. And you'll see that these feats are, they all are featured in at least one of the sample backgrounds in this document. So you can also see, looking at the sample backgrounds, how to match first level feats with background if you decide to build your own background. And again, if you don't want to, you just grab one of these pre-made backgrounds and the background just feeds you a particular feat. For instance, if you pick the Sailor, you're going to get Tavern Brawler. And the reason for that is because in the little story that we provide for the Sailor, it's because on your long journeys, you have spent a whole lot of time in taverns, in different ports of call,
Yeah.
and in the process, you've gotten really good at participating in brawls.
Whereas like criminal, you get alert, I believe.
Yes.
Because that makes sense.
Yes, because you want to be very alert.
You gotta look out for the soldiers of the crown or whatever.
Exactly. And people are going to see that alert, which is a returning feat, has new functionality.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited about this whole approach that we're taking with backgrounds. It's all about building your character's story and making certain meaningful game mechanic choices that reflect the story you have in mind for your character. And each of the sample backgrounds that we provide are really there to inspire you, to show you the kinds of backstories that you can have for your character. So that's why you're going to see, again, not only some returning backgrounds, like Soldier, like Sailor, Acolyte, but you're also going to see brand new ones, like Cultist, Pilgrim, and a number of others, all meant to show a different aspect of a character's life that could have been formative in who they are.
Yeah, and it's such a good, it helps for a point of inspiration how you roleplay your character as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and add like the meaningfulness of the backgrounds. Like backgrounds were always cool before, but now it's like, okay, this has oomph, a lot of oomph.
It has.
Are all of you okay with this speed? Are you guys okay with 1.5? Is this too fast for anybody? Anybody want me to slow it down? Are we good here? Y'all let me know.
It has a lot of oomph because its background is also where you can express your character's culture, where your character is from. Some of those elements that used to exist in some of our character races, those elements now exist in background. That migration of sort of culturally encoded elements migrating to background is a philosophy that informs a number of the design decisions in this particular UA. It's why, for instance, to go back to one of our race options, if you look at the Dwarf in this Unmarked Arcana, the Dwarf does not have Mountain Dwarf and Hill Dwarf as sub-options anymore. And there's a reason for that. It's because those options were only cultural for dwarves. In our D&D worlds, those are really cultural designations that different dwarf communities have taken on. And also in some D&D worlds, those names don't appear at all.
Right, yeah.
And unlike, say, elves, who actually have different mystical abilities based on their connections with different environments, whether it's wood elves who have particular magical abilities because of their connection to primeval forests, or drow who have, their magical abilities because of the millennia they've spent in the magic-saturated Underdark. Dwarves don't have those associations. And so instead of having a choice, which was, again, cultural, and culture now is reflected by background, we focused in on, let's make the dwarfiest dwarf. And so in a few cases where maybe before there's an option that's not there anymore, really often the option is just moved someplace else. And so any of the cultural cues that a person before was searching for in, say, their dwarf character, they can now replicate those, and often with more oomph, in the background system. For instance, if you want to really lean into, the fairy tale dwarf who not only has all the characteristics we expect of a dwarf, but also is like a miner and this sort of thing, then I encourage people to go pick the laborer background, where you're going to get all the stuff you would expect for a character who's really leaning into that archetype.
This all connects to Monsters of the Multiverse as well.
Absolutely. So anything that you're seeing here is designed to play side by side with books you have already, and that includes recent books like Monsters of the Multiverse. So The dwarf, for instance, that you see in this Unearthed Arcana is meant to exist in the game side by side with the Dwergar that appears in Monsters of the Multiverse. The elf in this UA is designed to stand side by side with the sea elf, Eladrin, and Shadar-kai, who are in Monsters of the Multiverse. Same with gnomes, where we have the sort of the player's handbook gnome that we're looking at here, and then we have the additional gnome option of the deep gnome in Monsters of the Multiverse. So really, when you look at the player's handbook version of something, that is the most sort of like archetypal, universal version, the most.
I want to answer this question. Do you think it will be backwards compatible with 5th edition or produce a split player base like 3.0, 3.5? I think that it will be so similar that you could easily go from a table that plays that plays 5.5 exclusively or OneDND exclusively. If you learn that, it will be a very minor transition to go back to the 5e table. And I guarantee you that even the most 5e of 5e tables will pull something from 5.5 or OneDND, whatever you want to call it.
Common version that you're going to see. All of those other versions that we have, particularly in a book like Monsters of the Multiverse, which we designed to be a big collection of options.
Sorry, one more pause. This is the same as homebrew rules. Lots of every DM uses a different set of homebrew rules. I think that will be more of an adjustment than the other.
That would then be able to stand shoulder to shoulder.
It'll be fine
with the options in the new core rulebooks. You then, when you put them all together, have this amazing family of options. And these new options don't take away those, but instead, in many ways, create some. When you look at one and look at the other, it really then highlights even more what's special about each of the options.
This playtest material is meant to work, and the future product, the future player's handbook, very nicely with the books that already exist.
Exactly. Now, there's a lot we could say about the feats that you're getting from those backgrounds.
Correct.
I'm really excited for people to read through all of them, to see what's going on in these feats, rather than going through each one of them, as much as I would love to, because there's so many
there's a lot to look at.
There's so many fun things in these new feats. Really what I'd love to do is talk briefly about some of the philosophy behind the decision-making here. I've already talked a bit about some of the things that distinguish a first-level feat from higher-level feats. There's another thing that informs some of the decisions we made about the feats here, and that is, first I'll talk about feats we revised, and then I'll also talk about brand new feats. So whenever we were revising a feat that already existed in the 2014 Player's Handbook and made the determination that it was going to become a first-level feat, we not only wanted to make sure it was delivering something with very clear functionality and clear value, we also wanted to make sure that the feat is useful to the people who most archetypally would want to take it. Here's what I mean by that. If you look at the healer feat in the 2014 Player's Handbook, you read the title and you think, hey, I'm playing a life cleric, I'm a healer.
Right.
That's probably a feat I want to take. But then if you read it,
not very beneficial.
No, because that
they do laugh.
Actually written for a person who maybe doesn't have any healing ability.
Right.
So we have kind of turned that on its head. And we have now made it so that this feat is beneficial to people who are already healers, while also providing a healing ability to somebody who lacks it. So that's the kind of the needle we're threading in a lot of these, that maybe a feat that before seemed to be calling to a particular type of character, but then didn't connect with that character at all. We've now made it so that it is beneficial for that kind of character. Like many life clerics are now going to want to take the healer feat. But then also many non-spellcasting characters, I think, might be drawn to the healer feat because of their character's backstory, because of the battle medic ability that is now in the healer feat that allows you to actually heal somebody using a healer's kit. And you'll see that again and again in these feats. Things that are either going to be beneficial for the individual character who we expect would be attracted to the feat, or beneficial to the whole party. Here's an example of that. In the alert feat, now first level feat that, again, the criminal has, not only do you get a bonus to your initiative roll, but you also now have an ability when initiative is rolled, you and another member of your party can swap initiative.
Which is amazing. I love it.
And that ability alone is going to make many groups like, oh, we are so happy if somebody has alert. Because we have all, playing D&D, been in that situation where like, if only this particular character was able to go earlier.
Exactly, yeah.
And so now the character who is, because this alert feat is designed to mean this is the person who is exceptionally ready to jump into action and can help one of their buddies do so.
And that's another example of like alert.
I'm gonna be honest here, chat. They should not have made this one video. This should have been 3 or 4 videos. Like, I don't know what they were thinking, making this 1 hour long video. But hey, that's what we're here for. All right, we're gonna break this down. I'm gonna make videos out of this. These are gonna be separate videos. I'm gonna do a video on race, backgrounds, and crits. Maybe
Was a
feet.
very
velocity.
like for my character only feat.
Right.
like I just want to be first.
Right.
Now you have the option to like pass that on to someone else in your group and be a good party member.
Exactly.
If given the option. But yeah, like that's lovely. That's that dual purpose for all these feats.
Yeah, and then the brand new feats are designed to fill some character type gaps
laughs.
that existed before. Gaps that really came to mind for us as we were designing the sample backgrounds.
What's an example of one of the new feats?
So musician
Right. Oh, there you go.
is one of the new feats, and with the musician feat, you can not only gain proficiency with 3 musical instruments of your choice, and sort of getting 3 tool proficiencies used to be a function, one of the optional functions of the skilled feat, but now you get a more flavorful version of that, not only in the musician feat, but also elsewhere. So you get to choose 3 musical instruments that you're proficient with, but then you also have the ability that whenever you finish a short or long rest, you can give inspiration to a number of people who hear you play a song on one of your instruments, and the number of people who can gain inspiration is affected by your proficiency bonus. So in other words, the higher level you get,
It scales
the
rather
more,
nicely. Yeah.
and so, you know, in any group, we're like, gosh, we'd really love to have sort of inspiration in our pocket, ready to go. And for anyone watching who doesn't know what inspiration is, because a lot of groups don't use it, that's essentially having advantage in your pocket, ready to use when you
So
need
Hannibal.
it.
Right.
And so a person with the musician feat using this inspiring song can give people inspiration. So this brand new feat is not only filling a gap in our previous feat list, but it's also doing exactly what I was talking about earlier about the healer feat, and that is it will be useful to also someone who's already a musician, most notably the bard.
The bard, yeah.
Because this ability to, whenever you finish a rest, to give a certain number of people of inspiration is not an ability the bard has. So this combines really nicely with a bard's kit.
Yeah. So you can become the most bardy bard, or you can play a fighter who also on occasion takes out loot.
Yeah, who before battle plays this beautiful song, and everyone is like, now I'm ready to
Remember
go.
God Sam?
That's perfect.
Yeah, and again, that is the philosophy here throughout, is how can
Vaguely.
we make people who, again, want a taste of something they don't have happy, but then also make the people who already have the thing also happy. Magic Initiate does this too. Magic Initiate, like some of the feats we've published in the past year or two, now tells you, hey, not only do you get some spells that you can cast for free, but if you already have spell slots, you can use them to cast these spells too.
And we saw this in the evolution of like Tasha's and other books where that you very much keyed into the fact that like, yeah, I got this first level spell, but like
Yeah, I
you can't
remember.
upcast it with
I do
Magic
remember.
Initiate.
Right.
So it's a little like frustrating if that spell can scale up if you like use a higher spell slot.
And now you can do that.
Yeah, if you want to hellish rebuke someone, which
Right.
I love doing, you can do so now.
The feat also has been given broader functionality because people are going to see in this feat a
I don't like
reference to
this
something
section.
that is new.
I almost want to
let's
skip
talk
it.
about that. Let's talk about. I assume you're talking about spells and how they're defined.
Yes. So not only does the Magic Initiate feat refer to what we're about to talk about, but there are references to it.
Oh, I
elsewhere
think
in
he's
the
about to talk
one
about
of those being
crits.
in the High Elf, and that is we now refer to 3 new spell lists. There is an arcane spell list, a divine
Mayonnaise
spell
and
list,
instrument.
and a primal spell list. In our work over the last few years, as we've been preparing to start unveiling this material, we realized that as the game expands, as the new subclass options, also with the introduction of a class like the Artificer, with feats, with magic items, with a variety of things that give you access to spells, there has been a growing need for us to have a new type of spell list, and that is a spell list that isn't tied to a particular class, but is instead tied to really the source of your magic.
Right.
And so in this case, arcane spells are all about manipulating the background magic that's in the entire multiverse. Divine spells, as people would expect, come from either gods or the realms of the gods. And then primal spells are about drawing on the magic that is in not only sort of the elements, but also in the spirits of nature. And the way we sort of divide it is divine is really magic pulling from the outer planes, primal is pulling from the inner planes, and arcane is pulling from sort of the multiverse writ large. And so now, rather than us directing you for certain spell choices in particular contexts, like the previous Magic Initiate was like, all right, go pick from the spell list of one of these particular classes, which then suddenly, the moment we introduce a new class like Artificer,
Right.
then we need a whole new feat for that.
Yeah.
This feat now grows with the future of the game because now, anytime that we introduce a spell, the spell itself will have for you a tag that tells you if it's arcane, divine, or primal, or a mix, because some spells, as people are going to see in some of our upcoming Unearthed Arcana, fall into multiple categories. This is going to have a tremendous payoff, not only for like, oh,
What's your
this lady
short
someone
review
added a
of
new
how
arcane
different
spell.
OneDND
I have
is?
access
It's not done yet.
to the arcane spell list. I can now have access to that spell without
I'm still
it having
formulating.
to route through a particular class.
A much more elegant solution.
Yes, and it also is another,
Agreed.
it has another purpose for us. It's a way for us to take this notion of these sources of magic, which are mentioned, at least Arcane and Divine are, in the 2014 Player's Handbook, but now we actually sort of give them rules teeth, rather than just sort of being a story wrapper, because Arcane and Divine, and then occasionally Primal when it has been mentioned, have really just been a flavor wrapper. Now they actually have substance in the game itself, that there is a list that you can go look at and go, here are the sort of universal arcane spells, here are the universal divine spells, and so on. Now, people will have to wait for upcoming Unearthed Arcanas to see how classes use those lists, because classes are going to use those lists, but classes are also going to have access to spells that go beyond those universal lists. But again, that's for future us to talk about. But again, I think already this is super exciting. Being able to reveal these new types of spell lists that provide a tremendous amount of flexibility for characters, not only that will be able to be made with this series of Unearthed Arcana articles, but also that will be able to be made in the future.
I like this
Yeah,
spell
this
list
is
too.
a very exciting time. This is a very weighty UA. We're going to be doing this often this year. Somewhat semi-monthly, but yeah, not necessarily strictly defined in terms of timing, but we have a lot of UAs coming out this year. We need a lot of player feedback. So.
And there is so much in this UA that we could talk about.
Yes,
and
I know. We could have gone through everything, and we could have made this a 3-hour video.
And there are, before we sign off on this video,
Yeah.
there are a couple other gems in this UA I would love to
Go ahead. Yeah, I'm eager to hear.
So first, I encourage people in the rules glossary to look at not only the revised definitions of a couple of our conditions, they're also going to see there's a new condition that's in play, the slowed condition, and people are going to see in the upcoming Unearthed Arcanas updates to a number of the game's conditions, so I'm excited to see what people think about that. Also, I encourage people to take a look at the new rules for inspiration, because we've decided that rather than inspiration being connected to essentially just the DM awarding people for particular character choices, instead, inspiration is going to be something you can reliably get whenever you roll a 20 on an ability check, saving throw, or attack roll. We wanted a way to feed people inspiration through the system itself. And we love this idea of when you have a spectacular success, you're inspired by it, you're bolstered by it, and that can start creating this sort of snowball effect.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going for. We've also tweaked the rule on inspirations so that it's still the same, that you can only ever have one instant of inspiration. You don't get to stockpile inspiration. So you either have it or you don't. But we've now made it so that if something in the game gives you inspiration and you already have it, you can then immediately give it to one of the other characters in your group.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it's likely that people are going to have it because you get it by rolling a 20. And one of the new traits of humans in the game is humans, whenever they finish a long rest, have inspiration. So every human in your group is going to start every adventuring day with inspiration. And that means then if the human gets inspiration and already has it, they can then give inspiration to somebody else.
I need to change how I run inspiration now.
You know, inspiration flowing around in the party. And what people are going to see as they actually experience this in play, what the system is intentionally doing is encouraging you to use the inspiration, because there's more is coming.
Instead of just like really, I don't know when I'm going to need this.
Exactly. And it's we often, when we're assessing different parts of the system, if we see something that ends up getting hoarded so much that it actually almost never sees use, that to us tells we need to change something so that this actually becomes a fun part of play and not something that just gets marked on your character sheet and then you forget about it.
Is this the moment that I use it? That kind of almost anxiety. Like, like I've been in so many, you and I have been in so many one-shots where it's like, well, I never used it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gone forever.
Whereas we want to...
All right, we're about to move to crits. Before we do that, though, simpler spell list is good, but I like the flavor of individual list. They're still giving you individual spells. They're just grouping them. They're grouping spells into these lists. So, for example, Eldritch Blast isn't listed. That's still going to be a Warlock exclusive. They're just so individual when they go. They haven't covered classes yet. So slow down, chat. Slow down. They haven't covered classes. This UA is strictly races, backgrounds, and feats. When they cover classes, I think they're going to give classes individual spells, like the Warlock's Eldritch Blast. And Bards are arcane. Bards are going to pull from arcane, but you know arcane doesn't have healing magic. So Bards are probably going to be given healing magic. Unique spells are still going to be there. I guarantee you that. And I think they talk about it.
To say yes.
Yeah.
To say, yes, I'm going to use my inspiration because it's likely more is coming right around the corner.
The getting a natural 20 thing is so exciting because, like, that's such a cinematic moment, or like a great narrative moment of like, I've been very successful and now I have a little bit left over, and you could roll another 20. You can keep going and going and going. And
right. We'll listen to the crits again.
Something like that happens.
Hope y'all don't
the
mind.
odds are not high, but they're higher now to see something that kind of amazing at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very fun. The critical hits have changed as well. Can you elaborate on that?
We are experimenting in this Unearthed Arcana with a new take on the critical hit. So in addition to rolling a 20, now feeding you inspiration, whether it's an ability check, saving throw, or attack roll, we've now specified that if it's an attack roll and you roll a 20, it's also a critical hit as you would expect. But what's different here is it's only a critical hit if you were attacking with a weapon or an unarmed strike.
It's weird going from the laugh. I got to see how slow are they talking? Because we're at 1.5.
Now, in most cases in our game, that was already the case in actual play. Because
This legit
most
feels
spells
like
in the
slow
game
motion.
trigger saving throws rather than involving an attack roll. Spells scoring critical hits was a more sort of rare
That is unbearable.
occurrence than weapons scoring them. But we're exploring this option. And again, I really want to emphasize, this is a great example of a playtest giving us the chance to experiment with something.
Remember, this is not set in stone.
Right,
This
right.
is playtest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We want to see what does the community think and how does this play out for them? Because what we're really trying to do is carve out a clearer space for essentially spell operations on one side and weapon and unarmed strike operations on the other. And the critical hit was already confusing for a number of people because I've actually lost count over the last 8 years the number of times I've been asked by the community, can spells score a critical hit? So funnily, this experiment in this UA will function for many groups the way they were already playing, because many groups had doubt that spells could actually critical, even though they could.
Right.
And so now we're experimenting with, well, just what if they can't? And this is a function of weapon use and unarmed strike use, which then also allows for us to do greater clarity, because then there's not that fuzziness before of like, take the dice that were involved in the attack and roll them twice. No, now we zoom way in. It's take the weapon or the unarmed strikes dice and roll them a second time. Now, of course, people know that some people don't have dice for their unarmed strikes, but monks and others absolutely do, and we wanted to make sure this critical hit option was available for them, in addition to characters who rely more on weapons. Now, there's an additional nuance here. The way we have worded this experimental rule, it is only player characters who score critical hits. Now, I need to unpack that.
Well, it's kind.
So first, critical hits for monsters.
Skip
Their level
this.
might mean
That's it.
critical hit, because a lot of those
Monsters don't have
with the weak
crits.
element
They have
is
recharge.
expect damage, then we'll see where we go next once we get the feedback on it. Related to rolling the d20, there's also another significant thing in the rules glossary that I encourage people to take a look at, and that is we have decided to embrace how many groups actually play, and that is when you roll a 1 or a 20 for an ability check, saving throw, or attack roll,
Right.
a 1 is an automatic failure and a 20 is an automatic success. It will surprise some people watching that that's a change, because
I know, because I've been doing it, I don't know, for like 10 years.
yes,
at least.
because for anyone who might not know, previously a 20 meeting an automatic success and a 1 meeting an automatic failure was only a function of the attack roll,
Right.
not of ability checks and saving throws. But what we have seen over the last 8 years is more and more groups use that rule for all of the D20 tests, and we decided rather than having the rules being in friction with how people actually play the game, let's update the rules so that the game plays the way people expect it to.
Well, that's what so much of what is in this first playtest material is much of that,
Yes.
of how people actually play or want to play.
Because we, over the last 8 years, through the many surveys that people have filled out that have been valuable to our work, we've been listening, we've been paying attention, we watch streamed games, we constantly play D&D, and all of that feedback, all of that play, all of that observation has fed into what people are seeing in this Unearthed Arcana and what they're going to see in the months ahead.
There's two sides of the playtest material. Like, this is a moment in time where like all of everyone's feedback has led to this playtest material, and your feedback after this is going to lead to the final version. So be sure to playtest.
Absolutely.
Because this is not the final version.
Everything here is subject to change. This is really, this UA in particular is our hello.
Yeah. Hello,
and-
we're listening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the feedback that then the community provides in response will help determine what parts of this make it into the new core books, what parts do we set to the side, and what parts do we keep but change. And so what everyone is going to see, just like with the D&D Next process almost 10 years ago, you're going to see an evolution in these playtest materials, in the game itself. Also, the exciting thing, I think, for everyone is you're going to be able to use all of these playtest docs with your existing core books. We have designed these docs so that you can take each one, and other than the places where we tell you, all right, you know that thing in your book? Well, here's an update to it. Otherwise, all this material works with the core books you already have. Meaning, the UAs that are ahead will be very targeted. Rather than it being like, here is a cross-section of the entire game,
Right.
instead, we're going to drill into one piece, because that piece will now work with the books you have already. And so that's why, in coming ones, we're going to drill deep on particular classes, and then eventually we'll drill deep on particular spells.
I'm excited about classes.
It's almost like we're building a mosaic that in the end, once all the pieces are in place, you will get a glimpse of what the new core books are going to look like.
This has to be very exciting for you. Like beyond the rules and the playtest, this is like a very exciting.
Okay, that's it. That's all we needed. Listen, chat, it is like super important. I can't recommend this enough. This is the time to like submit your feedback. Learn, like read this stuff, learn it, form an opinion on it, and then submit it. Like tell them this is it. The fact that they're asking beforehand and they're breaking it up into pieces, like this is shape this game how you want it to be. Whether you agree with my takes or not, just like vote. Basically what I'm saying, vote. Get out and vote. I can't believe I never thought of that analogy. Get out and vote, chat. This is it. This is the time. This is it. Otherwise, we're gonna have to homebrew. If you don't vote, we're gonna have to homebrew it. And I don't want to do that. All right, let me see. I want to make sure y'all can read. Freaking get out and vote. All right, so I'm going to ask you. So what I would like to do is I would like to listen to some D&D YouTubers' takes on OneDND while we read through this, but I'm going to ask you. I still think it's weird y'all have optional voting. Maybe we could do some one-shots on the Discord using the new rules. I'm probably going to incorporate some of these new rules. A lot of this is character creation stuff, which is fine. All right, so I'm going to ask you, chat, do you want me to... All right, we have I should probably poll this. Do people have an issue with homebrew? Not at all. I don't think anybody has an issue with homebrew. Nobody runs rules as written. All right, I'm going to ask chat. So here's our choices. I can either pull up the monitor again. I can either pull up our YouTube monitor, and we can watch videos of D&D YouTubers commenting on OneDND and getting feedback from them, or you can listen to me read through this document and we can talk and we can discuss it. So choices. What are you guys feeling? Read the doc. Listen to tubers. What creators? I don't know. Like viewers submitted. You guys can submit YouTube videos and we'll sit there and watch them. Who are we listening to? Whoever you recommend. The React meta is strong. Yeah, basically React meta. Bob the Builder. Bob World Builder, you mean? A little of both seems like a good idea. I'll tell you what. Let me give you an example. Let's do that. Let's do that real quick. I'm gonna read through and then I'll just so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. Let's find. Does anybody have a good one? You know what? Yeah, let's watch Bob World Builders. All right, Bob's got a 12-minute video. Let's watch this.
By listening to the fans. And what came out of that process was a system that is stable, that is well-loved, that incorporates the best elements of earlier editions. Now that we have that, we are no longer in the position where
I haven't watched this yet.
Think of D&D.
What's my take on the VTT? I'm so excited for it.
D&D.
That's the big news, folks. You heard it here. We are beyond editions of D&D and now entering OneDND, the singularity of D&D, the one edition, so to speak, to rule them all. Jokes aside, OneDND is the code name for the future of D&D. So just like as they were developing D&D 5e, they called this long playtest period D&D
I love Bob
Next.
Roller. Same.
OneDND is that. It may or may not also be the name that they're gonna stick with, or just call it D&D, because that's the whole idea. But here's what it actually entails. They're updating the D&D rules, so as we know, we're gonna get new versions of the core books, Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and Dungeon Master's Guide expected, as they say, in 2024. And the biggest part of this, in my opinion, is the digital D&D play experience. Let's play a clip of that too. So the D&D digital play experience is supposed to look like a miniature set that will be totally customizable, and the maps are supposed to be totally customizable as well, saying that you'll get a map in the digital bundle version with the new books that come out, but then you'll actually be able to customize that map and build your own with this whole online tool set, which honestly all sounds really innovative and is exciting. But now my goal for this video is together we will go through the frequently asked questions for OneDND and then take a quick look at the first glimpse that we have of these new core rules coming in that new player's handbook in 2024. And then in a couple weeks they're going to release a survey so we can give them feedback, and they'll theoretically incorporate that feedback into what will become the core rules. Now, is OneDND introducing a new edition? No, according to them, it's bigger than that, saying your adventures and supplements from 5e will all work in OneDND. What is changing with the OneDND rules? As it says here, there will be many fundamental updates. Again, they're changing the core rules a little bit, so even though they're not calling it a different edition, it basically still seems like it's going to be that. And that's why we're going to take a look at this first playtest document in just a second, but it says that these new core rulebooks are expected to be released in 2024. Prior to this, we've always heard it's coming in 2024, so now that tells me it might get pushed back a little bit. Honestly, I'd rather have more time spent on developing it so that we really get it right if this is going to be the everlasting version of D&D, which, sidebar, I totally don't think that's going to happen, because obviously in 10 or 15 more years, new people will totally be running the company, and they're definitely going to make a new game, because that's just how everything works. And now I want to keep this video short, so we're not doing a deep dive on every little nitty-gritty detail of this playtest document, but what I want to highlight are the major changes to the core rules that we're seeing with character origins. So this is all about race, background, and apparently language they're featuring as like a main thing here. It's kind of not, so let's get into it. And so here's the list, my friends, of the races going to be included in the next player's handbook. Human, a brand new one that we've never heard of or seen before, called the Ardling, the Dragonborn, the Dwarf, Gnome, Halfling, Orc.
The audio is real low.
Tiefling. So they kind of done away with half elf and half orc and all that stuff.
He's a quiet guy.
If you do want to create a character that comes from two of these races, you just choose the mechanics of one, but can decide.
Can pet Homer now?
Honestly, it's mostly just flavorful.
He's
but
asleep.
It's easy. I like it. Now, humans are very similar. They're still described as like the most versatile, diverse race of all, and that checks out. You can now be medium or small, which is kind of funny. It's starting at 2 feet tall. Seems very small for a human, but hey, there are all kinds of people out there. And they really just have these 3 mechanical traits. Resourceful, you gain inspiration whenever you finish a long rest. Inspiration, by the way, is now just getting advantage on a roll. Skillful, you gain an extra skill proficiency. And versatile, you gain the skilled feat or another first level feat.
All right, Bob.
Choice. So things to note there, a first level feat, what is that? Feat trees, are they back? Not exactly. They say they're pretty much just tagging them by level, but the point is here, all backgrounds do give you a feat, but the human and all humans, because there's just one kind of human, now all get an extra feat, just like they did in 5e. Now to keep it brief, the Ardling is the planar opposite of a tiefling. It has 3 different legacies, basically subraces: the Exalted, which come from chaotic good planes, the Heavenly from lawful good planes,
dark.
and the Idyllic from neutral good planes.
I am in the
We see
US.
that with the Tiefling as well. They come from chaotic evil, lawful evil, and neutral evil planes. 3 legacies each. The Ardling can be medium or small. They all have animal faces based on your legacy. You choose a different animal, and then they get spells at 1st, 3rd, and 5th level. But their other unique feature is Angelic Flight. As a bonus action, you sprout spectral wings for a moment and fly up to a number of feet equal to your speed. If you're in the air at the end, you fall. And resistance to radiant damage. Pretty cool. Dragonborn, at a glance, looked very much the same to me. Dwarf is interesting to me because there are no more dwarf subraces. They said in a video, like Jeremy Crawford said in a video, that they just tried to make the dwarfiest dwarf. So when you choose the race dwarf, you don't have to worry about different kinds of subraces.
Well,
you're just the dwarf. And stone.
The camera's ISO.
If you touch stone as a bonus action, you can get Tremor.
How was your
with a
summer?
range of
It was
60 feet.
good.
So it's literally like you're sensing the vibrations through that stone. That's a really cool feature. Very mythological for dwarves. I love it. Elves look pretty much the same. Dark vision, now a lineage thing instead of subraces. So we got Drow, High Elf, Wood Elf, Gnomes.
There's not near as many feats as I thought there was going to be.
Done away with the term subrace. And halflings. We just have one kind of halfling. Taking a quick look at orcs, they can dash as a bonus action and gain a number of temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus when you do so. They have powerful build. Oh, that's exciting. I mean, that was from the original orc race, so I'm glad they kept that. And relentless endurance. When you're reduced to 0 hit points but not killed outright, you drop to 1 hit point instead. Tiefling, now instead of all being infernal, again, mirroring this new Ardling race, they're either abyssal, infernal, or chthonic from the neutral evil planes. And just like the Ardling, you have these other cantrips.
Savage
and other
attack doesn't
spells that
proc
are
sneak
fun.
attack?
But now backgrounds have actually changed quite a bit. The number one thing that I noticed is we don't see those personality traits, bonds, ideals, flaws, any of that anywhere. First, they really emphasize that you should build it yourself. That is now the default, and then the option is choose a sample background. But when you build a background, you get your ability score increases. So no more racial ability score increase. Now it comes from your background. Honestly, this makes sense to me. Then you get 2 skill proficiencies, a tool proficiency, and choose 1 language, 1 first level feat. So everybody does get a feat. And equipment equaling 50 gold pieces to spend on stuff. Cool. They have a lot of familiar ones here, like Acolyte, Artisan, Charlatan. Cultist is a new one. Farmer is definitely new.
Thanks for answering my question.
Farmer background before. This just makes all the sense in the world.
Of course.
Would come up from that. But something that I thought was cool was, oh, you just choose 1 language from your background? Wow, they're finally going to be reining in the insane amount of languages that a first level character can have. Not really. It actually says here with starting languages, you have common as a default, plus 1 that you get from your background, which can be a standard or rare language, and then you choose just 1 other standard language. So you start with at least 3. So you could just choose Druidic, even though its typical user here is a Druid. You could choose Thieves' Cant, even though you're not a rogue. And to summarize changes to the feats, they said that yes, they're organizing them by level, and the main thing
I'm okay with that.
Changing some of the names or changing some of the features, so they're just more obvious about what they do. They explicitly said that the healer feat was one that, oh, a lot of people used to choose that because they were playing a cleric, but then it actually didn't really benefit you much if you were a cleric. So the idea here is,
I'm concerned that Wizards is trying to turn D&D into a microtransaction situation with OneDND. Well, if you look at D&D Beyond, it's already kind of that way where you can buy pieces of a book. But I do agree. I think once the virtual tabletop comes out, it is going to be microtransactions for monster tokens specifically. Maybe it's basically going to be Hero Forge. It's I imagine that the D&D Beyond virtual tabletop is going to use the exact same business model as Hero Forge with monsters, which I'm going to spend a lot of money on it, and I'm not going to like it, basically.
hey, you see the healer feat? Oh, I'm playing a healer. Yes, it actually has stuff that will benefit you, but it will also provide some healing benefits to characters who wouldn't have those abilities otherwise. Oh, and here's a good one though. So they do have the lucky feat here, but instead of it being like over the top unbalanced, now you spend luck points for advantage on what they call a D20 test. So anytime instead of listing ability score increase, saving throw, and attack roll, they just call it a test to encompass all 3 of those rolls. And the glossary here actually gives some awesome information that I'm going to summarize. So arcane
Bump
spells,
up the
what's
video
that?
volume.
Now there are just going to be 3 spell lists: arcane spells, divine spells, and primordial spells. This seems like an awesome move. It's actually based on the source of your magic, so it's way more intuitive. Oh, and here's something big. Rolling a 1 now means you just fail anytime. Like, that's how a lot of people played, and now they're building it in. Same thing, rolling a 20 means you succeed. So on an ability check, on a saving throw, whatever your modifiers are, if you roll a natural 20, you succeed. Again, this is all playtest, but I think those things will stay. Personally, I kind of like that idea. Something I'm not sure about is critical hits. This will only affect weapon and unarmed strikes. So spells cannot crit under these rules, and monsters
Is there an opening on
cannot crit
Monday?
under these rules. It's just for player
Maybe.
characters. They kind of justified that saying like, oh, monsters have recharge abilities. That's kind of like a crit that you can choose when to use it. Basically, it's like if you're playing at level 1 and you accidentally crit, you're the DM. Uh-oh, I just rolled a crit. Now you're dead. A lot of people don't like that, so it makes sense to have that recharge thing where it's like, okay, I have this powerful attack available, but I get to choose when I do it. So if they tweak how recharge works, make it a little more common, I could see that replacing monster crits for me. But if I'm the DM and I roll a natural 20, I want to be able to crit too. It looks like the grappled condition now actually does stuff, because you know how in 5e, everybody pretty much just uses the first round to get into position and then never moves? So where grappled used to just make your speed 0 so you couldn't move, but no one ever did anyway, didn't matter. Now you actually have disadvantage on attack rolls against any target other than the grappler. Pretty cool. Other things. Inspiration just gives you advantage on a roll. That's cool. You can also give advantage to other characters, and again, you get it anytime you roll a natural 20. It lasts until your next long rest. I really like that. It seems like an inspiration mechanic I would actually use. Long rest mostly seems the same, except one thing I noticed is it says if it's interrupted by combat, it just doesn't work unless you already rested for an hour, in which case it'll gain the benefits of a short rest. A new condition called slowed. Basically, I think it's just a quality of life for the designers, because there are a lot of other rules that do this thing, where you spend 1 extra foot of movement for every foot of movement using your speed. So now instead of saying that for stuff like difficult terrain, you can just say you're slowed in difficult terrain. Bingo. And then here's the spell list. The one thing I'll point out about this that stood out to me, arcane, divine, primal, is that under none of the spell list, but I expected to see it under arcane, I don't see the Eldritch Blast cantrip. So I think that means Eldritch Blast is just
be
going to
Warlock
be a
only.
Warlock feature. We'll see when they make an Unearthed Arcana playtest document for classes, but I hope this answered some of your questions about what is OneDND. Thanks for watching, and keep building.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bob. Sure you liked the video. Does anybody have anything else? Does anybody have any other videos they want me to watch? Some good takes while I read through this? The other mind's going to get killed for young players. Why you say that? Why you say that? All right, what are we going to look at? Do we look at races, feet? All right, let's just start from the top. Let's look at races. I wonder what Friday's gonna be like tomorrow. Dungeon craft. The pros and cons. All right, Dungeon Craft, what you got for me?
Deathbringer here. Subscribe and get my t-shirt at the link below.
Professor Dungeon Master here, and this channel is about running the ultimate tabletop role-playing game. It's a week since the OneDND trailer premiered, and I've had a chance to download and peruse the documents and watch the accompanying videos, and I have a few more insights into OneDND that I'd like to share with you today. So first, the good, and there's a lot of good. Not a lot of people talk about this.
This guy has the worst takes. Oh boy.
D20 rules are going to be called tests. No more ability score checks, skill checks, saving throws. It's all going to be a test. It might seem like a minor thing, but I teach D&D to a lot of people who've never played before. And that language, it was very confusing.
I saw that D20 test. Here it
roll
is.
a D20 and roll high. It's
I like
really
this.
accessible language, and I just think
Who
it
is
makes
this?
the game much more easy to understand. Rolling a natural 1 means
Dungeon
you don't
craft.
succeed. I have been talking about this for years, and I get so much crap from people saying, you're trying to nerf the characters, and this is supposed to be a heroic game. But if a character's got a 26 passive perception, why is a dungeon master calling for perception checks? You can't fail. I like the idea that characters are
Professional
not
dungeon
always
master.
going to be successful. Players always want to win, but it opens up such great story potential. I don't like to call them fumbles. I like to call them complications. But you roll a 1, and I might say, well, your sword blow hits a sconce, and it falls into a tapestry, and it sets it on fire. And now you're in a burning room, which heightens the tension. People will say this disproportionately affects fighters because they're always rolling to hit. But if you watch fighting on YouTube, like you can actually watch people fighting with axes and in armor, and you'll notice that they're disarmed pretty quickly. Like the fighter might kill the goblin, but their sword gets stuck in the goblin's ribcage, and now they have to find an improvised weapon or pull out another. I love this. It makes total sense to me. Backgrounds. Now you can build your own background.
Just want to say this: making sense in real life does not necessarily mean it's a good thing for D&D.
Or choose from a list of backgrounds, and these backgrounds give you bonuses to your ability scores, +2 and +1. So an entertainer gets +2 charisma and +1 to dexterity. And for some reason they all speak Elvish. But what if you're an elf? Good question, to which I don't have a really good answer. But I like the idea of background being separate from class and race. Spells are now divided into 3 categories: arcane, divine, and primordial. I think that just makes a lot of organizational sense. It's way easier to understand. Long rests don't work if interrupted by combat. Chris Perkins is rewriting the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think this is a great idea. Back in the 90s, I was a contributor to Dungeon Magazine, and I got published 3 times. And for every time I got published, Chris Perkins got published like 4 or 5 times because he's that good. He really loves the game. He was hired eventually as the editor of Dungeon Magazine. He's worked
I actually didn't know that
and
about
Wizards of the Coast. He's been at this 30 years.
Papa Perkins.
In the video, he says he's retooling the Dungeon Master's Guide to be especially helpful to new Dungeon Masters, and I think that's a great idea. D&D's weak spot
I'm
is
about it.
now we have tons of players, but not enough Dungeon Masters. I went to Gen Con recently, and different game systems were begging for game masters.
Logical's
They were willing
fun.
to pay
Not
$15 or
always.
$20 an hour
Not always.
for a 4-hour slot. That's $80 if you wanted to game master a game, because again, tons of players, but not enough people to run them. And that's why you have professional dungeon masters now who make a living at just running D&D. That's great for them, but if we want to grow the hobby, there has to be more dungeon masters, and we need a Dungeon Master's Guide that makes it easier and more accessible for them. Okay, that's the good. Now the meh. These are things I
there's the
still
good
really
stuff.
have much
Oh, no,
opinion
it's never mind.
about,
It's
but
meh.
they are things. Everyone gets a feat on first level. Humans get 2. Inspiration means you get advantage. I guess that's clearer. There's only 1 type of dwarf, but 3 different types of elves. Orcs are an official playable race. There's no racial bonuses. It's all based on background, so you can have a
I love
desperate
that.
dwarf that's good at juggling. So races aren't all monolithic and stereotypical in terms of ability scores, but at the same time, all dwarves have stone cunning and all halflings have luck, which is a bit of cognitive dissonance, but I'm going to move on. You can also make your own race. So now Horklings, a combination of halfling and orc, can be a thing. And what you do is you get your +2, +1 to your ability scores, and then you choose the trait that you prefer. So orcs, if they're reduced to below 0 hit points, they automatically stop at 0, so they're really resilient. And halflings have luck. You could take either of those for your Horkling. So now we get Horklings, Dwarfs, and Noblins. Personally, I find it implausible that all these species can intermingle because of, like, DNA, but that seems to be what people want.
That's such a... These species shouldn't be able to... DNA! I don't know. I don't know about that one. It's like... That's a bit pedantic. I don't know. So far, this guy's takes have been okay. I don't know about that one, though. I don't know about DNA being a...
Why? Hasbro probably
Okay.
loves it because they're introducing a virtual tabletop, and they could potentially charge people for customizing a virtual miniature figure of their character. Everyone speaks 3 languages, which seems implausible in a medieval society where travel is limited and there's no printing press or public education, but what the hell do I know? I'm
All right, you missed something. There's magic.
just a language teacher. Still, that's not the hill I'm going to die on. To me, the VTT is a wash. I admit it looks cool, even though I love physical terrain. I get people's concerns about possible microtransactions, and it holds little appeal to those who play theater of the mind, but I don't have enough evidence. My jury is still out on this one, and I'm intrigued. Moving on to the bad. First, the playtest.
All right,
is
here's
not
the
really a
fun stuff.
playtest. You look at the rules and you answer a survey. So it's not a playtest in the sense that 5e, when it was D&D Next, was an authentic playtest. Monsters don't crit. Instead, they recharge their abilities. Jeremy Crawford says in a video that players don't want to see their first level characters insta-killed. Personally, I think this kind of puts it on permanent easy mode. Even Bob Worldbuilder, who seems like the kindest, most gentle DM ever, says, hey, I want a chance to roll critical hits too. I roll all my dice in public, so when my players see me pick up 3 of them, and I say, you're about to get a claw bite, they're shaking with fear. And it's not that I could insta-kill them, it's the threat that that's a possibility that gives the game tension. If it goes through as an official rule, I have a feeling that many game masters, including myself, will just house rule that monsters still get a critical on a natural 20. Other problems. Human.
Okay, I agree with that take. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna make my final judgment on removing monster crits when I see what they do with recharge. Most DMs, most of the forever DMs that don't get to play the game, that are always playing as monsters, like their crits too. I like my crits. I'm gonna miss the crits when they go away. I'll probably homebrew that my monsters can crit, but it depends on what they do with recharge. So I'm pretty much in the same boat as everybody else, and this is why this playtest stuff is important. You need to voice your opinion on this stuff. If you want to keep your monster crits, you got to tell them. You got to tell them, hey, please don't remove this. Don't be an ass. All right, don't jump on Twitter and start adding the developers with death threats or some stupid. Just tell them this is what this is for. This is what this is for. I see the VTT as a natural progression. I'm excited about the VTT. I'm very excited about it. Can't wait. Can't wait. I'm probably, to be honest, I said this in the stream, but in a previous stream, but to be honest, when the VTT comes out, if they allow map making, I will probably shift a large portion of my time and creativity towards map making in the official VTT. I will probably invest a lot of time in that, or at the very least, hire Cartog. No, you know what? No, I'm going to invest my time in. I may even do guides on how to make maps and stuff. Map making techniques. I'm going to invest heavily in map making. All right, what you got for me?
Suck. They get what? An extra feat? The other races can breathe fire, re-roll natural ones, and fly. Did I mention the Ardlings? they can fly. We'll get back to that in a second. Earlier versions of D&D balanced demi-human powers by saying you get an ability score increase, or you can see in the dark, but only humans can achieve the really high levels. So there was a real balance there. The result was a game that was human-centric, with demi-humans taking a back seat. In the OG DMG, Gary Gygax writes, this was a conscious choice to ground the fantasy. If every character is a fantastic monster with the ability to breathe fire or cast spells or fly, it's not magical, it's mundane. And at some point, the game stops feeling like D&D. Just like Jefferson
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Cool when they sang White Rabbit, then they became Jefferson Starship, then Starship, then sang We Built This City on Rock and Roll, and by the end, they did not sound like the original thing. I think that's what happened with 4th edition. I'm concerned it's going to happen again. And if you're under the age of 45, this analogy is going to make no sense to you.
Web
so
DM did a good video. It's kind of
long.
long.
The issue is Ardlings can fly. What's an Ardling, you ask? Well, a tiefling has the lineage of a demon. An Ardling has the lineage of an Archon. So at first level, they can sprout wings
In
and
person will
fly
always have a place.
a number of times per day equal to their proficiency bonus, which they regain after a long rest. The game master in me is just baffled, and I'm thinking how I would never allow this. But the
Oh, God. Is this going to be another flying at first level is OP? Oh, my gosh. Not another one. Come on. You had me. You had me, Dungeon Craft. You had me. Are you about to... All right, let me let him finish.
Video opportunities, and when we talk about what is overpowered in the 6th edition, it's going to be this. This week you have to sneak into the hidden fortress. Its sheer walls are 90 feet high. Only the most daring and cunning rogue can... No problem. My Ardling flies to the top and drops a rope ladder. Guess we no longer need rogues, and goodbye, pit traps. Talk about a game breaker. If I were rewriting the Dungeon Master's Guide, I would have embossed in the inside cover, the DM's judgment supersedes all written rules, and I probably put it in the player's handbook as well. And if I were giving new game masters advice, the first piece of advice would be don't allow player characters that fly. And you wonder why there's not enough game masters, and this is why. So of all the rules, this is the one I hope doesn't make it through playtesting, but that's what I think. What do you think? Please share your thoughts in the comments below.
Don't mind if I do. Yeah. First level flying, not that great. All right, I'm gonna listen to his example again. Pay attention, chat.
In the 6th edition, it's gonna be this. This week you have to sneak into the hidden fortress. Its sheer walls are 90 feet high. Only the most daring and cunning rogue can... No problem. My Ardling flies to the top and drops a rope ladder. Guess we no longer need rogues, and goodbye, pit traps. Talk about a game...
Goodbye, pit traps and rogues. This is what we're losing with first level flying. Rogues and pit traps. I don't get it. Listen, flying is not that bad, chat. It's not. All right. Immunity to if a race, if a race said immunity to pit traps, we wouldn't be flipping out, right? We wouldn't be flipping out if a race said immunity to pit traps. It most certainly doesn't invalidate rogues. Right? In the example he gave, sure, you can enter the castle that way. You can fly up and then drop the rope ladder. But he did say like 90 feet. I don't know. I just that doesn't seem that great to me. What about a climb? You could do this. Matter of fact, that argument he gave, I wonder if he allows climb speed. The argument he gave, he said that there's a wall. There's a 90-foot wall blocking you from the castle. Does he allow tabaxi in his game? Anybody know? Because he would have to ban tabaxi too. Anything with a climb speed. Spider climb, you can't get that at first level as far as I know. A familiar could probably do that. If you allow a familiar to carry a rope ladder, climb and swim speed is OP. I don't know, man. It's not that bad. Overall, good video. I'm giving it a thumbs up. And I'll give him a sub, too. It's the first time I've ever heard of him. But I do not agree with his flying. Everything else, pretty good. I don't agree with his take on flying, though. You kill the familiar. I mean, you could kill the flyer too. You could just as easily shoot the flyer down. This guy's like no fun if no fun wasn't just being contrarian. A spider climb magic item? True. He wants everyone to be level 0 peasants. I know, right? Okay. I'm going to read through this. Anybody got any other videos y'all want me to react to? I don't know. I don't do a lot of react content. This is kind of fun. Anybody got any good takes? I know somebody said DM. Web DM? You guys want me to watch the web DM one? Always handle flying NPCs well. What about Burrow? You can react to me. I'll react to your video when you post. No Fun, did you post a OneDND video yet? I know you posted a short, but I'm looking for like some takes. I don't know, man. I'm so tired of the level 1 flying argument. It's not even permanent flight. It's an ability. Dungeon Masterpiece and the VTT is bad. Surely the Ardling doesn't have enough movement to reach 90 feet. Let's see. That would actually kind of shut down this guy's argument. Let's have a look at the Ardling's flight. Remember, they could dash. How much flight does an Ardling get? Well, first of all, where is the damn thing? I just saw it. Ardling. As a bonus action, you sprout spectral wings for a movement and fly up to a number of feet equal to your speed. So you couldn't get that 90-foot wall. And if you end in the air, you fall. Yeah, so and even in his own example. Even in his own example. Up to a number of feet. If you're in the air at the end of this movement, you fall. Sorry, I was on the train. Can I get context as to what I missed? Somebody said that the Ardling was OP because they can fly. They can't even fly. In the example they gave, they couldn't fly up there. If you're building a world inhabited by flying humanoids, then there will be unique weapons for dealing with them. Yeah, crossbows. Sounds like a bait. Tabaxi. Also, anything with a climb speed could get up there. I don't know. I don't want to sit there and... I'm tired of the level 1 flight is OP argument. You know what? No fun. All right, listen. Chat, I need you to go forth. All right. I've been in the mood to debate for a while. A good debate. I need to find somebody to debate first level flying with me. That's what I need. I was just in the voice chat earlier trying to think of debate topics. First level flight. That's what I want. I want somebody that will die on the first level flight as OP Hill. That'd be some quality content. Hey, what's up, Ivan? But 80% of the monster. Listen, I want to address that. That 80% of the monster manual argument. I think it's 70% of the monster manual is the argument. I got two things to say to that. First of all, your level, assuming that there is an even spread across the entire monster manual, your level will only account for 5%. I'm going to say that again, nice and slow. If the monster manual has a perfect distribution of every monster across every level, 20 levels, that means that only 5% of the monster manual will be available to you at your given level. So your level negates 95% of the monster manual. It's another way to word it. All right. My other argument is that environment should be a factor, because if it isn't, swim speed also negates a huge chunk of the monster manual. If the monster manual is skewed, then it's even more. Then it's even more in favor. Like, I was being generous by making it an even distribution. You have monsters who have less than 1 CR and monsters who have greater than CR than 20. Valid. You bring up a valid argument, but remember, I'm not talking about CR. I'm talking about what to put up against your level 1 party. Or what to put up against your leveled party, I should say. Like, these are the monsters I can use against the level 1 party, is what I mean. Is what I meant, not CR. If it's not OP, then how come druids can't fly until higher level? How many DMs plan encounters in 3D space? Pull that. All right, I want to read this book. Damn. My other argument is swim speed. You wouldn't say swim speed is overpowered because it negates X amount of the monster manual. I feel like the same thing could be said about flying. Like, this is what you can negate with flying. This is what you can negate with swim speed, right? You wouldn't ban Tritons at your table or lizard folk because they have a swim speed. It's environment dependent. How come fly spell is 3rd level? All right, well, I'm pretty sure fly hits multiple targets. How come fly spell is 3rd level spell, which comes at 5th level? Fly hits multiple targets, first of all. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure fly hits multiple targets. Oh, you can upcast it to hit multiple targets. My bad. Also, the fly speed is double what you would normally get. Adding a crossbow is too complicated. But how many level 1 encounters are done out in the open? I mean, that's how many level 1 encounters are done out in the open? Does anybody? All right, I'm gonna ask right now. This will be fun. I'm gonna ask right now. Does anybody want to get in the voice chat right now and debate me on flying? Please, somebody. Who's up for it? Who wants to take me on? I've prepared for this. I'm not skilled enough to debate. Come on now. All right. I would, but I agree with you. Unfortunately, I agree with you. Thank you. All right. Well, the offer stands. I'm not the best debater and I have a bad voice. I volunteered no fun. I don't think no fun thinks 1st level. For flying 1st level. I agree with you, but I will. No. I am a master debater. Oh boy. Sounds fun. That sounds fun. All right, let's read through this. All right, let's do races. Races, I feel like it's kind of boring, but we'll do them. Find me somebody that will debate me, please, chat. So what are your points that flying is not OP? Because flying is a movement option. Flying doesn't provide anything except a way to avoid melee. To answer specifically, overpowered means more powerful than, how do I define this? So when we use the term overpowered, that means when compared to other things. I think there are more powerful things available than flying. An extremely powerful movement option? I don't think it's extremely powerful. I think it's extremely limited. Flying can very quickly become volleying. Yes. First off, if you're indoors, no flying. Second of all, if the enemy has ranged attacks, it doesn't do anything for you. It only provide. I did a whole video on this already, but hold a person on flying targets, death, yeah. Also, flying gets rid of your melee option. I should clarify that too. I didn't say that. Flying gets rid of your own melee options as well. Flying is a way. Let me rephrase it. Flying gets rid of your own melee in exchange for their melee. It's not like an uncommon item can give flying. Who would play a flying class that is melee? This isn't even proper fly. It's just move in any direction without worry of obstacle. Does activating the spectral wings count as a bonus? Yes. 30 feet is roughly a 3-story building. The building doesn't have roof access. Floor trap's not working. Tripwires higher up. Valid. A flying rouge. Harpies still have claw attacks, right? If you have a reach weapon and the monster does not, you can stay out of melee from that creature. Yeah. Or if you have a ranged weapon and the monster doesn't, you can also stay out of that. I would say maybe flying after a certain number of turns you must land. I don't think flying is that bad on its own. I don't think flying is that. I still haven't been able to read the doc. I've been glancing at it as we watch videos and stuff. Keep getting distracted by chat, wanting me to debate. I really want somebody to debate flying with me. Spend your movement for running start. But how many full casters would want to be in melee? To clarify, we're talking about the spell fly. Not many. If you have a flying PC, you just introduce more flying enemies if they abuse it. I mean, the issue people have with flying is that it negates certain monsters. So, for example, like wolves. But what they don't factor in is that the wolves can still swing at the rest of their party. You know, like the Tarrasque. You wouldn't say that the Tarrasque has been negated because the first level character can fly, but the Tarrasque doesn't have a ranged option. Or more ranged weapons on your enemies. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Being afraid to change being afraid to change encounters and add to encounters is one reason that DMs are kind of reluctant or nervous about flying. Being a flying character is great. Other party members can soak up damage on the floor. Yeah. If flying is so OP, then just double the gravity. Right. All right. I'm like, should I read? All right, let's read races. Screw it. I don't know. You know what? I don't really want to read through the races. I get it. I get it. Spell magic. Magic's a problem, then delete the magic. All right. Let's build a background here. I want to talk about flying. Can also make bandits fly. He's not going to read it, chat. How do you feel about the dwarf changes? All right, I'll read the dwarf. I like that stone cunning is actually useful. I feel like DMs had to force stone cunning. Like, okay, I'm gonna find a weak part of the stone for this dwarf to notice. Resistance to poison, advantage on saving throws against poison condition. Your hit point max is increased by 1. And again, whenever you gain a level, it's pretty cool. Forge wise, your divine creator gave you an uncanny affinity for working with stone and metal. You gain tool proficiency with 2. Jewelers, masons, smiths, tinkers. I really hope they change the freaking tools, man. I'm so over some of these tools. As some of you well know, and then stone cutting I already commented on. Stone cutting is really cool. I like that they have an activated ability. I think WotC hates dwarves. No lineage for them, but elves, gnomes, and halflings. Tremor sense, not blind sight? Correct. More activated abilities is good? Absolutely, I agree. Sam, you need to study for the test. I mean, flying really only counters monsters without ranged attack, which is pretty much monstrosities and animals. So when you build encounters with those, add monsters with ranged attacks, right? I've seen a horse fly and a dragonfly, but I've never seen a Tarrasque fly. Only been DMing 3 years, never ran into a problem with flying. That's right. It's just something I mean, it can be challenging at first, but once you get used to it, I mean, ranged attacks. Or just let them be flying. Let them be leave them be, you know. How married are you to that wolf encounter that flying threatens everything you stand for? Imps, easy fly with no problems. Yeah, you got imps, you got peritons. Gargoyles are a good one. Counterpoint, ban flying because keeping track of height on a 2D map sucks. Eric, you got me there. That's about the best argument I've heard against flying, is that it negates the playing in a 3D space. That's about the best argument against flying I've heard. All right, backgrounds are going to give us ASIs, skills, tool proficiencies. I really want them to change tool proficiencies. I want them to overhaul the absolute hell. You know what, chat? I'm going to ask something of everybody. When you fill out the survey, please mention like tool proficiencies and crafting. You don't necessarily have to agree with me, but just like, it needs some love, chat. It needs some love. Maybe I named the wolves Doggo and Mr. Pups, and I don't want them to die. Now I don't want them to die. You named them? Does anybody use it? I changed it so that they're more useful. I use a homebrew. I use something from the DM skill to make it useful, or to make it interesting. So yes. All right, we've got some sample backgrounds. Charlatan, cultist, yada yada, guide and hermits, labor pilgrim. Oh wait, how did they change Outlander? Did they change it? Because they got rid of background abilities, so Outlander's probably different. Let's see, because that was such a strong ability, being able to feed your party. Looks like they got rid of Outlander completely. I'm going to switch to double view. Crafting system may be incredibly useful. I posted a video on my crafting rules that I found from the DM's Guild. I highly recommend using those. They're so good. They're so fun. Xanathar breathes some life into it, but it's very meh. I agree. Very meh. Outlander OP, crafting needs clearer rules. I agree. This goes against my argument, but on the fly battle maps allow you to add height. 100% tool proficiencies. That's what I just said. What is the, wait, all right, hold on. What is the problem with tools in your opinion? They don't do enough. They don't have enough of an impact. There are some tools that are just outright. I covered this in my crafting video. I go into detail about my problem with the tools, But in general, it feels like it's not a very meaningful choice, and I would like to see more of it be used. So what I do is I cut the amount of tool proficiencies. I limit it to a very small limit, and I make each of those choices matter. Like they provide a very good benefit, a very huge benefit. All right, I got ahead of myself. Let's read some feats. We get it. Backgrounds add a tool, feat. Let's get to those feats. Let me switch back to single view. Like one of glass blowers tools is like one of the ones that I talk about is just so useless. Like you really have to create a scenario for that to come in handy. That one time. When did you do the crafting video so that I may look it up and watch it? Let's see. When did I do the crafting video? Wasn't too long ago, was it? Here it is. D&D crafting. So before we get into the changes that I would make to the crafting rules, I want to make sure we're all on the same page in what the crafting rules are. Let me adjust my crafting video. Whatever. Glassblower's tools for money making. Run low on gold. Make cups. I mean, that's more of a... The tools are not meaningful mechanically, but for the players that like to roleplay on a more low magic setting, they appreciate the flavor. Yeah, flavor is free. That's why I would rather them be separated. I would rather flavor be a thing. I would rather it just not provide mechanical benefit. I would rather it just be a flavor thing. Like my character's a glass blower or a Fletcher. Makes horseshoes kind of thing. Okay, alert. When you roll initiative, you can add your proficiency. Immediately after you roll initiative, you can swap your initiative with the initiative of one willing ally in the same combat. You can't make this swap if you or the ally is in cap. You know what would be really funny? If the entire party took alert and they all assigned themselves the same initiative order. Like every time, all right, DM, this is our initiative order for every combat. We all took the alert feat and we're all going to assign ourselves this initiative order. And that'd be kind of funny. Glass blowers I've used to help make the vials for potions. Or took a thing out of Ultima 7 and made glass swords. That's cool, but that's not something. Why can't you just hold your action until that person acts? So making initiative old school, huh? You can't hold your initiative anymore. I mean, you can hold your action. But holding your action doesn't change your initiative anymore. That was an old school rule. All right, crafter. You're an adept. See, look, they even have a feat for crafting. You're adept at crafting and bargaining with merchants. You gain tool proficiency with 3 different artisans' tools of your choice. Whenever you buy a non-magical item, you receive a 20% discount. That's kind of cool. I like that. It's kind of cool. When you craft an item using a tool with which you have tool proficiency, the required crafting time is reduced by 20%. I really hope they put emphasis on crafting. I hope this feat isn't just here for fluff. I hope they put some emphasis on crafting. All right, we already heard about the battle medic. If you have a healer's kit, you can expend 1 use of it to tend to a creature within 5 feet as an action. That creature can expend a hit die and then roll that die. Gains hit points equal to it, plus your proficiency. Whenever you roll a die to determine the number of hit points you restore with a spell or with this feat's battle medic, you can re-roll the die. Pretty cool. I can't pull a fast one on this guy. Okay, here's the real value. The pony, that's literally how initiative worked in 1 and 2. Bean counting. All right, lucky. You have a number of luck points equal to your proficiency. I really want to listen to another take while I read this. What else we got? I'm just gonna check my recommended. 3. All right, y'all ready for this? 3 terrible things in OneDND's UA. Here we go.
We're going to be talking about the Unearthed Arcana again from D&D 1, the character origins. But instead of the good things this time, I'm going to talk about the bad things. So there are 3 things in particular that I do not like about the new Unearthed Arcana, and albeit they are kind of small, so it's not like devastating or groundbreaking.
So lucky does not work if you have advantage or disadvantage.
This is my opinion, and yours may vary. And these are in no particular order, just probably in the order of the document of how I read it. The first one is they're changing how critical strikes work. And unfortunately, casters are losing the ability to critically strike with their spells. And I think it's in an attempt to make the disparity between martial classes and casters' damage closer together. But I think this is not a good change, only because they are getting rid of the kind of crit fishing archetype for casters, or like casters that just want to do damage with big crits. And this is kind of an archetype that I personally like because it carries over from video games to Dungeons and Dragons, and I enjoy that playstyle in video games, so I think there is the potential for it
I like this
still
guy.
be in Dungeons and Dragons.
I like this guy.
The
Who is
fix
this?
for it is just make the players invest something for it. Make it either a higher level feat,
Brady does.
like levels 4 or 8, or whatever the increments of higher level feats Wizards of the Coast is going to do. And I think that's honestly good enough. You give up an ability score improvement, so your bonuses to hit go down, while
Because you
gain
agree with
the
them? No, I just like his
ability to crit
presentation.
on your spells. I always think a choice for the players is good, so giving them the choice to be able to crit or higher spell casting ability.
Like he's not as aggressive about how he disagrees.
The second thing I dislike about the Unearthed Arcana is not all of this, but a portion of the D20 tests. And in particular, it is a very small part of it, now giving auto fails and auto successes on natural 1s and natural 20s accordingly, with particularly just skill checks. And I think this is the most controversial.
Hold on. Daniel, because you agree with him, the only take that he made was about criticals. Everybody hates that. I don't think that's not really a because you agree with him. Matter of fact, crits, I'm not like, I already said that I'm waiting on the whole crits thing. I don't hate it. I don't trust people who make their beds so neatly. Yeah, he looks like he's in a dorm. Maybe he's in a college dorm.
Opinion I have in this video, but at first glance,
He
you
just
might be
seems like a really
well,
nice guy. I don't know.
Why
What
you
do
think
what do
this
y'all
is
want
bad.
from me?
You're letting players do what they want to do. This seems good, but it's kind of the opposite of that, which makes me hesitant to like it. When I got a chance to sit down and think about it, this auto fail, auto success makes me think about having to change the way I call for skill checks, which could be good, but this might affect the players more than
I'm waiting on
Wizards of the
recharge.
Coast intended. That's why I'm hesitant. I'd obviously have to play around with it and see what I do and don't like, but that's my first thought. And my second thought about it is attacks and saving throws, which are now part of the D20 tests, are completely different than skill checks, because both attacks and saving throws are kind of these spur of the moment, very quick rolls that happen almost instantly in the game and in a very short time span. And because they're brief actions, I don't think all skill checks work the same way as attacks and saving throws do. So
I would be very
is where
surprised if
another
at least
bit of my
40%
hesitancy lies.
have recharge.
Some skill checks are very much not. It takes 3 seconds.
I want them all
do
to have
something.
recharge.
You
Every
could
one of them.
Scale a wall that takes.
If they're
around
all
5
losing
minutes. You could
crits,
be
I want them all
foraging
to have a
woods. That
recharge.
takes an hour. You could be trying to track an animal. That takes maybe.
Wait, I got it. I know what I want. Rather than unrealistically expecting here. All right, chat, listen to me. rather than unrealistically expecting every single monster to have a recharge ability, because there's no way they're going to go through every single one and be like, all right, recharge. Here's a recharge ability. Here's a recharge ability. I want them to have recharge abilities similar to feats that you can assign to monsters. Like here's a list of recharge abilities that you can give your monsters, and just have like monsters with random tables. So like just a list of recharge abilities that you could give to any monster. Oh, that would be so cool. Oh man, I get behind that.
Maybe even longer.
If that's not in there, I'm gonna put it in there.
Take all day. Those activities
That sounds like some DM Guild stuff. Like if that oof.
particular don't have this small element of in the moment you instantly fail because you take one small step, your ankle twists on a rock and you fall down, and now you can't attack or do whatever skill you're doing. To me, it's just not what a skill check is, and maybe you disagree. You're investigating a room for the puzzle, and that takes ample time. And since it takes so much time, it lacks the ability.
Won't that be somewhat overwhelming, or would be CR sensitive?
Have that
Good
devastating
question.
natural one failure that most people see it as, like, oh, you dropped.
Yeah, it would have to
you
scale
tripped and
somehow.
fell, you're prone now. It's just, to me, they don't mesh together.
Because monsters have
There are a
proficiency
couple
bonus.
fixes
Maybe they
you
could do like
just
proficiency
say,
recharges.
You know
Like,
what? You
I
don't
don't
like that rule? It doesn't apply to skill checks, or maybe even on a skill check that is sustained over.
That's a
long
trick. You got
period
me
of
there,
time.
Iceman. Trick.
This rule doesn't apply because the law of averages just kind of works in the player's favor, so there's no critical fail element, even though I'm sure you could think of 100 reasons why there could be a critical fail. The third thing I dislike about the Unearthed Arcana was also in what's kind of good about the Unearthed Arcana, and it's the lucky feat. A lot of people love the lucky feat.
What?
But this is one of the bad parts of the lucky feat.
All right, what you
And
got?
It is on this list for a completely different reason than it was on the good list. This has more to do with how classes and backgrounds are structured now. Since every class gets one feat based on the background they chose, I feel like Lucky is the number one level 1 feat from the entire Unearthed Arcana. A lot of people like it, and I think it will show once people start playing, because the human now just gets an extra feat at level 1. And so I sense, since the character gets 2 level 1 feats now, since it gets one from the background and one because of the race, I think Lucky's going to be picked on every human probably 90% of the time, or maybe
90%.
It's that strong, and I think it's too strong for being a level 1 feat. There are a couple things you could do. I think the only reasonable one is just to make Lucky not a level 1 feat. It's the most simple, most straightforward, and with how big the inspiration changes are, I can see a world where inspiration and Lucky are stacking on top of each other to the point where players know they aren't going to fail any rolls they don't want to fail. With 3-4 times inspiration within a session and then a lucky feat, players are going to have advantage a lot of the time, and I think that is a pretty drastic power creep change where it's not really thought about. Maybe it was and they don't care, but I've seen power creep in a bunch of different games, and this definitely is a power creep situation. So I think Lucky might need another look at, and just maybe make it a level 4 feat or whatever increment they go with. Thank you for watching what I thought were the 3 worst things in the Unearthed Arcana.
Chat,
If you
sub to
agree
Brady
or
does.
disagree, let me know what
Go
you
show
think
some
is
love.
bad.
He's only
down in
got
the
15
comments.
subs. I will happily
Thank you for
be.
watching, and
I will happily be your 16th sub, Brady. All right, I don't really agree with the lucky feat take though. You have a number of luck points equal to your proficiency. You can spend the points on a benefit below, regain expended lucks on a long rest. Immediately after you roll a d20, you can spend a luck point to give yourself advantage. When a creature rolls a d20 and attack roll against you, you can spend 1 luck point to impose disadvantage. What do you guys think? You guys think Lucky is OP? He said 90%. I don't know if it's that good. Even if it is that good, it's kind of boring, you know? For my players, what's that channel? Hold on, let me find it. I am his 16th subscriber. I'm going to post it. Brady does. Seems like a pretty cool dude. Got a pleasant voice. Still not as good as old Lucky. It's very powerful to be Jay. Only barely have people pick it now. So does that mean you roll 2 more d20s? Immediately after you roll a d20, you can spend 1 luck point to give yourself advantage. All right. So I roll the d20 and I get a nat 1. Hold on, DM. Don't tell me the result. I'm going to spend a lucky point and roll it again. I think that's what that means. This man's going to wake up tomorrow and wonder where the subs came from. Only if you all go subscribe to him right now. How many people do we have in the chat right now? 56. If that man does not have over 50 plus subs in 15 minutes, I'm going to be upset with you, chat. This guy's just getting started. Actually, I have no idea if he's just getting started. Okay, he's been at it 2 months. Go show some love. Subscriber bomb time. Let's go. Choo choo. Positivity only. It does not work if you have advantage or disadvantage. This is true. He's got 22 now. We did it. We did it. It would be overpowered, except you can still roll another nat 1. All right. Anybody else got some videos? Anybody else got some other takes that y'all want me to have a look at? Dungeon Craft, Bob World Builder. Somebody said Web DM. He's at 31 now? That's the kind of community I want to be a part of right there. I'm so proud of y'all. Dungeon Masterpiece. The Web DM one's an hour long. I don't know if I'm feeling that. Dungeon Masterpiece. I don't think I've heard of this person. All right, so this one's about the VTT. All right, so listen, before we watch this video, I want to say I am very excited about the VTT. Can you help me? I'm an Aasimar Paladin. How do you play one? You're done editing. All I need is a thumbnail. I don't know what to tell you, random. You need help playing an Aasimar Paladin? I've done a short on both Paladin and Aasimar. So you... How does DM inspiration come into advantage? All right, hold on. Let's look at inspiration real quick, and then we'll watch this one. The main way a character gains inspiration is by rolling a 20 for a d20 test. You can never have more than one. When you have inspiration, you can expend it to give yourself advantage on a d20 test. You must decide to do so before rolling the die. So the difference is, so first of all, you can't inspiration and lucky. First of all, you cannot inspiration and lucky because they both do the same thing. They give you advantage. So we scrap that. Inspiration, you have to decide before you roll the die whether you're going to burn it. Have to decide before. Lucky says you can do it after. So that's the difference. And you have to expend it on long. Does it go? If you still have an inspiration when you start a long rest, you lose it. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't catch that. You lose an inspiration on a long rest. Very interesting. Yeah, they really want DMs giving out inspiration. I kind of like that. Hello, Mr. Streamer. First time I could pop in when you're live and look at them apples. Going over the new OneDND. I personally only have a gripe with how half-assed parent races seems. All right, let's have a look at parent races. I like the idea of it. Is that really your only complaint, Orange? Like you don't have a problem with spell crits or flying at first level? I'm sorry. Like that guy was pretty cool. I just really didn't agree with that flying take. I really did not agree with it. It was kind of a bad take in my opinion. All right, help me out here, Orange. Where can I find the parent stuff? You lose inspiration when you start a long rest. Rough. Where's the sample backgrounds? Where's the parental? Where's where you choose your parents? All right, I'm looking at feats. All right, here's starting languages. Page 2. Ah, here we go. Children. Children of different humanoids. Here we go. Thanks to the magical workings of the multiverse, humanoids of different kinds. See, they even said magic, so stop worrying about DNA. Somebody else said DNA too. Folk who have a human parent, an orc or elf parent are particularly common. Many other combos exist or are possible. If you'd like to play the child of such a wondrous pairing, choose 2 race options that are humanoid to represent your parents. Determine which of those provides your game traits, size, speed, special traits, and then mix and match visual characteristics. For example, if you're a character that has a halfling and a gnome parent, you might choose halfling for your game traits and then decide that your character has the pointed ears that are characteristic of a gnome. Determine the average of the 2 options' lifespans to figure out how long your character might live. It's not too bad. What's your problem with that? I'll miss spell crits, but I think spells for the most part are strong enough. I agree, Orange. They are pretty tough. Parent races could have given us the race choice freedom of 3.5. Well, to be honest, 3.5 was kind of a mess. You can't pick and choose traits in one or the other. Yeah, it looks like you choose one. So here's how I'm reading this. You choose a race to be your stats, and then you choose a race to be your appearance, right? Isn't that just picking one mechanically? Yeah, now that I'm like processing it, you're basically choosing one to be your appearance, one for flavor, one's mechanics and one's flavor. Really, that's what that is. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Like, yeah, I'm an orc, but I have elf traits. I present as an orc. I'm as orc as an orc, but I have elf traits. I don't mind it. I honestly don't mind it. I can understand why people wouldn't like that, but I've got okay with it. Because look, you could be like, okay, I want to play a Dragonborn, but I want human traits. But you can choose physical traits, right? More flavor is awesome. Yeah. So I can be a Minotaur, but I could choose like human traits. It sounds min-maxy, but I mean, it's just real. It really is just like it's really just flavor versus mechanics. And I'm always okay with that. So you can basically choose the race that you want to be mechanically, and then you can choose the race that you want to be physically. I'm okay with that. Absolutely 100% okay with that. Dwarf with a breath weapon? Right. Dwarf with a breath weapon. That's a good example. So I may look like a dwarf, but I have the traits of a Dragonborn. That is so cool to me. I'm sorry. This may be something. I may divide my viewership with this one. I love that. I think that's amazing. I think that's so cool. Why did they introduce small and medium heights? It kicks my brains. Change Warcaster to give spell crits. That's interesting. Unlock spell crits with a feat. All right, we're watching this. Tell me about the VTT.
Finally flush with cash thanks to the incidental marketing
Who are you?
Stranger Things has provided Wizards.
Dungeon Masterpiece.
The D&D game publisher is finally fulfilling my childhood RPG dreams. As part of the release of OneDND, Wizards of the Coast is launching a fully integrated virtual tabletop. This new experience will feature fully interwoven character building, environment rules engines, and tools for lazy dungeon masters. And just the pre-alpha looks amazing already. But these are my childhood dreams. And children lack the wisdom and foresight to understand how this seemingly small development will likely have negative impacts on the tabletop role-playing community for generations to come. Longtime viewers of my channel will know that communication philosopher Marshall McLuhan is one of my all-time heroes. Penning the maxim, "the medium is the message," in his book Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man, McLuhan discusses how the mediums we use to express our ideas irrevocably shapes the way we interact with those ideas. Or, in simple terms, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Therefore, in order to cater to the mobile user from birth, younger generation, it only makes sense that Wizards of the Coast would develop a vertically integrated virtual tabletop for Dungeons & Dragons. And that's even ignoring cultural shifts toward virtual collaboration due to the pandemic. This was inevitable. Teenagers were already highly comfortable with this stuff in 2017. The issue with WotC's in-house VTT development, however, is that for the past half-century, Dungeons & Dragons has been played around a table with friends and family, and largely without the concept of mobile devices or virtual tabletops existing in the D&D zeitgeist at all. Therefore, Wizards of the Coast pivoting from a tabletop-first to a virtual-first business model.
Okay, skirt. I gotta stop them there. At no point did they say that the virtual tabletop was going to come first. Damn it, am I misunderstanding? Chat, am I misunderstanding somebody?
And yet, development, however, is that for the past half-century, Dungeons & Dragons has been played around a table with friends and family, and largely without the concept of mobile devices or virtual tabletops existing in the D&D zeitgeist at all. Therefore, Wizards of the Coast pivoting from a tabletop-first to a virtual-first business model, and yes, they're absolutely going to do that.
Okay, all right. Here's his evidence. Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons are also now at the center of an aggressive digital transformation. We have made a multi-$100 million commitment to develop digital games in the near and long term while working with the industry's best gaming partners to activate our brands across platforms. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think, okay. This to me doesn't necessarily mean digital first.
To a virtual-first business model, and yes, they're absolutely going to do that. The OneDND VTT wouldn't be worth the investment to shareholders as a side project, would mean that younger kids who are introduced to D&D for the first time will see these fully integrated virtual game systems running in their browser and will immediately be glued to the video game-like nature of the whole ecosystem. Obviously, I'm aware virtual tabletops have existed in the past. Roll20 has been around since 2012 after all, but never have these platforms had such direct and clear access to players that the OneDND project will enjoy. New players will receive marketing flyers for the new VTT platform in every box set, book, video game, and any other D&D paraphernalia sold. Tailspire just simply can't compete with that. In 10 years, nobody will even know what Tailspire is. With all that said, however, to truly detail how this business realignment will influence the game's culture, imagine how players interacted with D&D from 1974 till today. Players, especially while role-playing in the theater of the mind, had no issue dropping chandeliers on goblins, damming up a river to flood out a nearby ogre-infested dungeon, or whatever creative shenanigans players can come up with. And non-theater of the mind gaming is something I've acknowledged as an issue with physical tabletop terrain as well. Miniatures and terrain limit the creativity of players at the table, but virtual tabletops? That just adds another layer of obfuscation. Physical miniatures and terrain can be picked up and manipulated by the players at the table, even the parts of the terrain set that the virtual tabletop likely forbids, like walls, doors, trees, or even whole buildings. These impulsive and physical manipulations of the tabletop terrain can invite creative use of player spellcasting, for example. In virtual settings, however, it only follows that players will likely succumb to the even more limited and constraining effects of the software itself. If an interaction with the software isn't easy to conduct and it isn't an obvious option, players won't even think to do it. Moreover, because of the new
there's a lot. I'm not. Woo, I don't know. I don't know, chat. I don't know about this one. He is really going off the deep end here. I don't know, man. So first of all, he's saying that if in case you didn't catch, let's watch it again. Let's listen to it. Pay attention to what he's saying. My interpretation of what he just said is that if you are playing on a physical tabletop, it limits your imagination. That's the message that I'm picking up. I'm going to listen to it again. I want you to listen to it the same. But he's basically saying if you're playing in a physical tabletop where you could see things, it limits your imagination. Because and he's saying that the VTT will harm that further. That's what I heard. The opposite of that is what he's saying. Okay, we're gonna listen to it again. Let's listen to it again. Listen closely.
Can be picked up and manipulated. And non-theater of the mind gaming is something I've acknowledged as an issue with physical tabletop terrain as well. Miniatures and terrain limit the creativity of players.
That's the line he just said.
And non-theater of the mind gaming is something I've acknowledged as an issue with physical tabletop terrain as well. Miniatures and terrain limit the creativity of players at the table, but virtual tabletops?
He just said that physical terrain.
Theater of the mind gaming is something I've acknowledged as an issue with physical tabletop terrain as well. Miniatures and terrain limit the creativity of players at the table, but
I don't know how else to interpret that.
That just adds another layer of obfuscation. Physical miniatures and terrain can be picked up and manipulated by the players at the table, even the parts of the terrain set that the virtual tabletop likely forbids, like walls, doors, trees, or even whole buildings. These impulsive and physical manipulations of the tabletop terrain can invite creative use of player spellcasting, for example. In virtual settings, however, it only follows that players will likely succumb to the even more limited and constraining effects of the software itself. If an interaction with the software isn't easy to conduct and it isn't an obvious option, players won't even think to do it. Moreover, because the new virtual tabletop engine developed by Wizards of the Coast already feels so much like a video game, as demonstrated by the concern-hushing statements in the launch video.
So that people understood that this wasn't a video game?
Players will likely bring their video game playing expectations with them. Expectations where environment manipulation just isn't worth the CPU cycles to program in. I know people in the argument section are going to counterstate about how Roll20, Owlbear Rodeo, or even Tailspire virtual tabletops already experience many of these problems. But these VTT systems are not the default method of experiencing D&D today.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say this. I'm going to read chat real quick. Forces players to be creative in these environments. They can see their obstacles and react accordingly. I'll talk about that in a second. Let me read chat. If you feel limited by tabletop terrain, you aren't asking your DM enough questions. Lol. I would like to think any DM is flexible enough to describe a scene beyond what's on the table. DM put a miniature wall here. Maybe I can move it because it's easy, but in VTT, oh well, DM won't be able to change the wall here because it's not programmed to do so. Chat, be nice. Just because hey, chat, be nice. Just because you disagree is not an excuse to be mean. I disagree. First, it's very player dependent. Play tons of theater to mind only tables. So here's my thought. All right, let me say my take. I think that when you have a map, when you have art, when you have terrain, when you have features, that allows you, that tells you what's there, and everything else can be left up to the imagination. So I think that takes the load off of your imagination so that you can add more to it, because you can't like process everything. Like if I tell you to think about, oof, man, this is really hard to convey. Oh, man. I might have to come back to that. It lays the foundation for creativity. Good call. Very good take. So everything that's not there can be filled in with your imagination. You use less RAM on environment and more on engagement. Exactly. So you're using less brain RAM on picturing the environment, and instead you're using your brain power on what's going on in the environment, right? Do DMs fill in? Sure, DMs can fill in. I like to give very brief descriptions of rooms so that the players fill in the rest. I find physical maps terrain help me speed up combat, not spending every turn answering questions about location. Yeah. He's saying having an absolute image takes away from the image in your head. Right. In a way, it does. I agree with that. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think that frees up some of your brain power so that you can imagine other things, so that you can use that brain power on other things. What do you think of that, Praza 91? It's a difficult argument because everyone's imagination is different. Some people can fill in the blanks easily than others. It's very personal to the player. I need visuals. I can see because I can't imagine things well in my head. I heard my name, Senpai. You said, dang, I don't even remember what I asked you. He's saying having an absolute image takes away from the image in your head. And I'm saying that's not necessarily a bad thing. All right, let's finish.
And are designed by smaller development teams with limited budgets for marketing. Furthermore, this new development also sets the standard for any other RPG system on the market that younger players might try. Integrating a D&D game into Roll20, for example, is difficult. It requires lots of setup, experience with the persnickety interface, and doesn't offer integrated DMing tools like a random adventure generator that can be set up with just a few button clicks. Contrast this with what's likely to happen with OneDND's virtual interface. Dungeon Masters will probably load up an entire 2-scale 3D battle map of Faerun's Sword Coast with pre-generated random encounters and
oh god, could you imagine? I dream of the day we can do that.
Adventures and pre-populated towns. Players who are just 10 years old today are just going to expect this stuff if they're to be convinced to try a different gaming system like Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, or Shadowrun. And that leads us to our next issue. It's only a matter of time before the digital sales of D&D content will largely be pulled from one bookshelf's DM's Guild and drive-through RPG platforms, so as to be shifted to a OneDND virtual tabletop store. And as much as indie be pulled from one bookshelf leads us to our next issue. It's only a matter of time before the digital sales of D&D content will largely be pulled from one bookshelf's DM's Guild and drive-through RPG platforms, so as to be shifted to a OneDND virtual tabletop store. And as much as indie game developers may dislike this, the jagged pill to swallow here is that drive-through RPG does a huge service to the independent game community by simply exposing 5th edition players to these smaller fringe RPGs. And when I say fringe, I'm including heavy hitters like Call of Cthulhu, World of Darkness, and Shadowrun. When over 50% of all...
Man, is World of Darkness fringe? I don't know. All right, let me finish.
20 campaigns are created for 5th edition, and the next largest system, Call of Cthulhu, squeaks by at only 10%
I guess
of
it is.
campaigns.
I guess it is.
It really illustrates how much every other RPG rule set struggles for any visibility at all. But when 5th edition content is no longer available on platforms which sell content for these other games, the organic discovery of these smaller franchises will become more and more difficult to carry out. And it's not not just smaller.
Man, he is like really going like he is taking like the smallest bit of information and just running with it. So first of all, I don't think the virtual tabletop is going to kill development across the DMs Guild or drive through RPG. Let's start there. So what he's saying is that once the VTT comes out, no more digital stuff is going to be available on DMs Guild or Drive Through RPG because it's going to be isolated. I think that digital maps are going to be more prevalent in DMs Guild and Drive Through RPG. I think this is just going to change what's available on those things. I don't think it's going to get pulled. I don't think either of those websites or any of those websites that he listed, I don't think they're going to lose anything. It will kill Roll20. Roll20 will die in a fiery death. It will plummet to the earth in a full 90-degree dip. Yes, Roll20 will die in the most fantastic way. But Drive Through RPG and DMs Guild will not, I don't think. I think those will have more features. His next point, man, there's a lot to unpack here. D&D only has benefits to spreading these games on these websites. I'm glad this video got chat burn and lull. I was hoping for this reaction. I loathe Roll20, don't we all? Did I miss where WotC stated they will no longer support other VTT or affiliates? He's making some assumptions there. I'm making some assumptions as well. Oh, you know what? Actually, I don't believe Roll20 will die. I don't believe Roll20 will die, now that I think about it. Sam, you don't like Roll20? I'm ready to be done with Roll20. I don't like buying books on Roll20. I like Roll20 as a platform, but I don't like buying the books across 3 platforms. I love being able to like create my own stat block. That's wonderful. I appreciate the dynamic lighting. I like the transmogrifier. But my big issue is just like buying the book so many times. What if we could make our own compendium? But you only have a limited amount. We swapped the Fantasy Grounds. Fantasy Grounds is solid. I've heard it's solid. Okay, all right, hold on. Let me process this. So let's assume, because this man wants to make some assumptions. Let's assume that WotC pulls everything off of the DMs Guild and everything off of Drive Through RPG. I honestly think that the other tabletops will grow because of that. What do you guys think? Is that a stretch? Is that a stretch? All right. Here's what I'm saying. Let's use Drive Through RPG. Let's say that all Dungeons and Dragons content gets pulled from Drive Through RPG. What do you think is going to happen? Because I feel like once Dungeons and Dragons is gone, people will migrate to other games. So chat, I guess I should poll it. Chat, do you believe if D&D is pulled from X website, do you believe X website dies? Or do you believe other TTRPGs grow? I hope I asked that clear. I don't think much will change if people go to Drive Through RPG to find D&D stuff and don't find it. They'll simply find D&D elsewhere. So that would be website dies. I choose this with hope, not certainty. Fair enough. Can both happen? Kind of both? Ooh. If the website dies, then the other TTRPGs aren't growing. I can't believe y'all are saying that the website dies. That's interesting. I don't think much will change. They will simply find D&D elsewhere. Officially released content being pulled, Minda. We're saying that, so here's the scenario. We're going to use Drive-Thru-RPG as an example. Wizards of the Coast says our VTT has been released. We are going to be the central marketplace for all Dungeons and Dragons content. We will no longer allow any website to sell our stuff except D&D Beyond. We are going to be the market. In this scenario, in this very specific scenario, chat, do other RPGs thrive now that D&D is gone? Or do all those websites die because their primary tabletop has been pulled from it? I honestly believe other tabletops will grow, but it's looking like a majority of you are saying the website dies. I don't think website dies, just that players who want D&D will find it somewhere. Maybe go to Drive-Thru to find other RPGs. So in that scenario, other RPGs are growing. Because keep in mind, the only way those websites thrive is that they, if they're selling stuff and their customer base is growing. And if their customer base is growing off of something other than D&D, that means other TTRPGs are growing. All right, that looks like a pretty even split. All right, let's finish.
Independent RPGs, which will have their discoverability nerfed. Game writers who use
what this guy is saying is that all other TTRPGs will die along with those websites. At least that's my interpretation of what he's saying. D&D Beyond already exists for digital copies, and Drive-Thru is fine. But that is true. But Drive-Thru offers other D&D stuff, fan-made D&D stuff. We're talking like D&D's gone. I think a more fair pool would be X website dies, nothing changes, or other RPGs are grow. Nah, something's got to change, right? Look, all right, let me explain something. Nothing changes is not an option, because without D&D, if those websites are thriving, that means other RPGs are growing. There's no way that nothing changes and other RPGs won't grow. There's no way that happens. If D&D is removed, other websites will be able to thrive as long as that website's thriving. Otherwise, it's dying. Like, in business, you're either growing or dying. If you're growing, other TTRPGs are growing. That's my logic. I could be wrong. That's my logic. But I don't think nothing changes is an option.
Use the DM's Guild content license agreement to create Faerun, Eberron, or Ravenloft content, sign a contract between Wizards of the Coast and One Bookshelf, the company that owns DM's Guild, to earn 50% of any published content sales while using WotC IP, while Wizards of the Coast retains rights to the created content. This might be a fine trade-off for people who are happy to make adventures for one of D&D's campaign settings in exchange for the visibility, but these creators, at the very least, are able to maintain some kind of tangible record that can persist over decades. A PDF or printed booklet goes a very long way in the perpetual longevity and discoverability of this licensed content. This is why I, today, can still play my favorite adventure, Janelle Jaquaiz's Caverns of Thracia, 43 years after its publication. This kind of experience is the definition of generational gaming.
There's very little that persists that long that becomes generational.
However, adventures programmed in this virtual-first oriented 1D&D system, instead of creating generation enduring written content, will instead be wound up in a non-durable, non-migratable system with microtransactions. You just can't make a PDF or a booklet out of a programmed event tree. One of the biggest hurdles of being...
All right. So now, jeez, man. He's saying that fan-made content dies. No way. That might be the most egregious stretch of all. Am I Mr. I like... He's saying stuff that is so out there and alien to me. I have to take a second. I have to take a step back and think, maybe I'm misinterpreting. Because there's no way he really believes this, right? Is that the interpretation you got, chat? Like, is he saying that fan-made content is going to die?
A dungeon master is the unspoken financial expectation that dungeon masters will pay for basically everything. Dungeon masters buy at least 3 times as many books, if players buy any books at all, and commonly provide the dice, miniatures, battle mats, terrain, and so on. With that said, the fact that there's only one person in the group with 3 to 5 players who makes the majority of the purchases isn't missed on Wizards of the Coast. And yet again, OneDND's new virtual game space solves this WotC marketing problem too.
I'm not gonna comment. I'm not gonna comment that I'm not gonna go too much into that, but you know what? No, I'm not gonna.
Two, if Fortnite is any indicator, players love to spend only 99 cents on avatar skins, special weapons, or who knows what else they can get through various microtransactions. And don't think for a second that OneDND would be any different. There will be no shortage of premium avatar poses, equipment loadouts, and even environmental asset packs for dungeon masters. D&D Beyond already has dice skin microtransactions after all. Therefore, between these player microtransactions and dungeon master third-party content being tightly wound up in OneDND's platform, Wizards of the Coast will have created the Apple ecosystem equivalent of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm sure you've heard a few people lament that they would give Android phones a try, but between their iPhone, their iPad, their iWatch, their AirPods, and their MacBook Air, they're as hesitant to do so as they are locked into the Appleverse. Similarly, the younger Dungeons & Dragons community will have even more reservations from abandoning not just a rule system they're comfortable playing, but all their assets purchased via microtransactions. Letting all that stuff go just to play in their imagination at an actual table will be less and less appealing to the more dominant OneDND's virtual tabletop experience. I hope I'm totally mistaken and that all of this effort somehow fosters more generational gaming innovations, but I just don't see that happening. If you'd like to help me make more content like this,
I don't know. We are we are really we are really out there. Do you think the VTT that D&D is making will be free or subscription-based service? I think the VTT will be free, but I think it will have microtransactions like he described. I think it will be like he described at the very end of the video. I think it will 100%. You'll buy skins to bling out your how do you join the Discord server? I think 100% there's going to be microtransactions for DMs to buy content for map making, and I think there's going to be stuff for players to make their tokens look cool. 100% think that's coming. I don't think so. That's pretty much the only point of his that I agree with. Everything else was like really a stretch. I don't think Wizards' focus is going to be the VTT. I don't necessarily think it would be a problem if it was. They'll nickel and dime the spit out of you in the VTT. I know. It's going to be just like Hero Forge. So we'll be buying skins for our VTT. It will if it makes the most money. I'm trying to think about like how did Magic the Gathering? I mean, here's a good example. Did Magic the Gathering? Do you guys feel like Magic the Gathering has migrated more toward a digital environment, or is it still really strong in the physical? And what are the different? Man, I would love to. Is this guy? Somebody reach out to this guy. I want to talk. I want to talk to this guy. Does he have a Discord? I want to talk to this guy. Get him in here, chat. He doesn't have a Discord. I need to set up. I want to email this guy. I want to have a conversation. I've literally interviewed him. I need to get in touch with this guy. I hope that the players can still customize their characters like Hero Forge, not having to buy the presets. And oh man, you're gonna have to buy all the things. MTG are doing a mobile version similar to Diablo Immortal. Magic is more than happy to sell you the same cards twice, once in paper, once in digital. MTG has separate communities, I think, which is why he said the kids won't want to give up their assets. He's probably right. MTG loves its booster says. The president of WotC is a former vice president of Microsoft. That's interesting. I hear what he's saying, but I think he might be over-exaggerating the threat to the hobby and creators. D&D is different than a video game in the fact that it's 100% free to play. Well, there are some free-to-play video games. MTG is still a massive physical-based game, but see, okay, so here's the thing. The reason I made the comparison to MTG is because MTG has a digital space, but the physical, I think, grossly outweighs the digital. The physical also has the advantage of being tradable. Like you can stock up, you can build a collection of Magic cards that increase in value over time. That's an investment. Magic cards are an investment as well as a physical game that you can play. So I don't think Magic will ever lose its physical aspect. D&D doesn't have that. So D&D is more at risk of being moved into the physical world permanently, or the digital world permanently. The digital part of MTG is popping off right now. Maybe more homebrew. Magic Arena lost a lot of its players after the inclusion of alchemy. If D&D adds crypto, oh God, I hope not. Physical is their base. Gotcha. MTG always have find your local MTG almost every Friday night all over the world. That's true. Black Lotus. NFTs in D&D? I hope not. No Fun. How do I get in touch with this guy? No Fun. Do you have a direct contact with this guy? Ask him if he'll pop in and talk to me. Ask him if he'll talk to me on stream. Or actually, No Fun. Hop in the voice chat with me, and then let's do this. I do. I'll ask him soon. No. Like I want him in here tonight. I want to see if he'll come in tonight if he's not busy. Why produce physical when digital is nothing? Ask Bitcoin. Main reason why I disagree with you about the danger of D&D going digital is because tabletop games is booming a lot, even after the pandemic. Well, disagree with me about what? You mean disagree with him? Tabletop games is booming a lot, even after the pandemic. This includes TTRPG. Wait, are you saying... Wait, do you know my position? Hi, Bloom. Hey, what's up, Bloom? The danger of D&D going... So, all right, so what you're saying... So, Blame, you're saying that D&D may go only digital? I think I heard you wrong. I don't know. I don't think physical D&D is being threatened right now. I don't believe that in-person D&D is being threatened right now. I think that will always be a thing. But I do think that digital D&D is growing. Which is kind of to his point that new players being introduced to the hobby are going to flock to digital. I think the digital space is growing faster than the physical space is because it's so much more accessible. I do believe that. Great, more socially awkward players who don't want human interaction. New people exposed to D&D through OneDND might not visit other sites as often, so visibility of other content system material might suffer. How many people do you know? I don't think I've met a single person that started playing D&D and didn't branch out. Is there anybody here that's been playing D&D for more? Let's do a year. I'm gonna use a year. Let's do the year. Let's do a year as the cutoff. Is there anybody here in the chat right now that has played D&D for more than a year and has not tried a different system or been interested in trying a different system? Is there anybody here that's played D&D for a year and thought, I'm fine with D&D. I'm not going to move from D&D. I'm okay with it. Is there anybody here like that? Because if not, then I think that kind of right here. So I started on a different system. My players don't try different systems. I'm happy with D&D. So there are people in here that have no interest in trying another system. It's interesting. I've played D&D for 5 years, not really interested in other systems. Okay, they exist. My bad. I'm surprised. I'm honestly surprised, but I got you. Interesting. I was not expecting that. Was not expecting that. Most people hate change and the way things are. Played a dozen systems. It makes me better DM for whatever system I run. Okay. I have little, but a tiny bit of interest in other systems. 8 years and counting. Oh boy. Call of Cthulhu. Played other games, but keep coming back. It's like crack. Y'all got to try World of Darkness. All right. Y'all got to try Vampire the Masquerade. Listen to me. It's a different game. What system do you use? Listen, y'all got to listen. If I can recommend you guys try a new system, it's got to be Vampire the Masquerade. I dabbled in Call of Cthulhu and I liked it, but if you're really into the role play aspect of D&D, Vampire is like Vampires for Edgelords. Don't come at me with that. Yes, it is, but why would you say something so controversial? Or I forgot the meme now. No fun. Did he get back to you yet? I want this guy. I want to talk to this guy. Rifts is an awesome game. His Discord's AFK. That sucks, man. I want to talk to this guy. He posted this video on the 22nd. And he had quite the take. Man, I want to talk to this guy. Maybe we could set up like a talk. What's your opinion on Call of Cthulhu 9th edition? So I've only played one edition of Call of Cthulhu. It's whatever the newest one is. And I enjoyed it. So how's it going? It's going. Is there a more combative-based D&D system? I don't think so. I think D&D is about as combat as you can get. It's also about as complicated as you can get. Any system you try outside of D&D is going to be a lot less complicated. Vampire's okay. Cthulhu's good if you're interested in a system that requires more thinking and less character sheets. Been around since AD&D days, borrowing from other systems for better rules. At the very least. Tried buying Vampire the Masquerade core rulebook, bought only the GM screen instead. World of Darkness latest edition said to be cringy. See, the last edition that I played World of Darkness was 20th anniversary, which was so good. Pathfinder's more complicated. I believe you. What is your main when you play D&D? DM. My players are so heavy into the combat, it's a little funny. I thank Seth Skorkowski for getting me to branch out in other systems. Seth is the way to go. He is definitely. That has 3 words in combat at the same time. And I'm actually interested, but I am as of now comfortable to enjoy D&D with friends. Feel it's much more to explore just in D&D. I put Seth on stage. Yeah, No Fun introduced me to Seth, and I fell in love immediately. Would you recommend trying previous editions or just stick with 5e? I played 3. I played 3rd edition, 3.5. I've dabbled in AD&D. Dabbled. I loved 3.5 at the time, but I don't ever want to go back. I've only played D&D twice. I want to play Vampire the Masquerade and other, but I find it hard to find people physically. Thoughts on Matt Colville? Grade A. Amazing. Probably one of the better like DM advice channels. What's your opinion on the Bagman? I know you did a short on him. I don't really have much of an opinion on the Bagman. I think it was a really cool addition, having a monster that moves across Bags of Holding is really cool. Which edition is my favorite? 5th edition. That one's kind of obvious. 5th edition is my favorite. I feel like that's a pretty obvious one. That one should have been a no-brainer. All right, we got anybody else? Anybody else y'all want me to... Y'all liking this React content? This is the channel now. This is what we do now. We just react. Steely Reacts channel. I ran him in my campaigns recently and terrified my players. Oh, the Bagman. What's your favorite homebrew monster or class, if you don't mind me asking? Favorite homebrew monster? The False Hydra is a homebrew monster. I did a short on the False Hydra. You would be surprised, but that is a homebrew. That is not an official monster, but man. Favorite book in 5th edition? Favorite book. The Player's Handbook. I don't know, that's a tough one. What short? The False Hydra is my favorite homebrew monster. The False Hydra is not an official monster. It is a homebrew. And it is my favorite homebrew. All right. Let's watch this guy. This guy's my recommended.
He's a kitten. He's destroying my house. Why is he destroying my house?
Yes, here.
Because you haven't subscribed to my vlog yet. Go. Subscribe to my vlog and save my house. Please subscribe. Help me reach 1,000 subs. Steve wants you to, and he's cute. Hello and welcome. Good morning. I am the OG GM with another exciting adventure
my ears.
in the world of OneDND. The most talked about, controversial, I need to shave, mess that is Wizards of the Coast's latest production. And what it all means. Hello, yes. So apparently we need to all be excited by the fact that Dungeon Masters cannot critical hit anymore. There's a lot to unpack in that sentence, Mr. Kendrick. So during his part of the interview at OneDND Wizards Present, Todd Kendrick
sucked into an Easter egg.
The DM can't critical hit anymore. So if a DM rolls a natural 20, there's no critical hit. Player characters can still do it. Why? Something to do with spells, criticals or not critical. Something to do with the swingingness.
Was the False Hydra? Never heard of it.
Bad guys do enough damage on their own. Why should they get the extra benefit of criticals? I'm sure this will be gone into deeper as the playtest continues and more people confront the unusual phrasing of the sentence. And it could change. Remember, we're in the beginning days of the playtest and what OneDND will eventually become. So anything Wizards of the Coast has said in the past couple days is pointless. Because one, Wizards of the Coast lies. And two, if they actually listen to the survey and enough people say that's stupid, they may change that. So right now,
I'm getting the feeling I'm getting some strong vibes from this video.
The statement is Dungeon Masters cannot critical. And there's a lot of ways to address that. Because he says Dungeon Masters can't critical hit. Now, in my 40 plus years of being a DM, I have never critical hit anyone. My bad guys, on the other hand, have critical hit a whole bunch of times. So he says specifically Dungeon Masters can't critical hit anymore. Not your bad guys can't. So there's some legal hedgeway around there. Hey, you can't crit me anymore. I've never critted you.
Oh my gosh.
That bad guy has.
What a great
rolled 3 natural 20s on you. That's not me. That's you because you chose to fight him.
What a great.
So there's a couple ways you could go at this. And again, remember, this is pointless because it's probably going to change. 1, session 0.
He's got a point, right?
Discuss. Are you cool with that? How about, we could say, well, if my bad guys don't get to critical hit, then you guys don't get to critical hit. And if you want to be able to critical hit, then my bad guy should be able to critical hit, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that if a first level player character fighter gets into a fight with a first level NPC fighter and they are exactly the same, they have the same armor, they have the same weapon, so numbers wise, they're basically the same guy, just one's an NPC. The PC gets to critical hit the NPC, but the NPC doesn't get to critical hit the player character, even though they're exactly the same. Now that makes no sense. Now I understand that this is part of the whole, we want to have more player agency and be more fair and never place players in a position where they might be in anything resembling danger in D&D anymore, because D&D isn't about combat and exploration anymore. It's about making players feel good and being a barista at Starbucks. I guess.
What is this guy talking about? Oh my goodness. Ooh, you know who this sounds like? It sounds like No Fun. No Fun? No Fun. I think you could collab with this guy. You guys. I think No Fun and this guy could get along so well. Much love, Steely. Much love, chat. Have a good one. Bye, Ivan. I miss you already. This man loves breaking players. It gets way better. I've talked to this guy. You should collab with him.
I mean, the logic is thin. The logic is thin at best. So again, session 0, you just all sit down and decide, okay, this is optional. Because remember, Wizards of the Coast also says, I love how they give themselves that, escape clause, where they always say after these things, but these are just options. Just because we're saying it doesn't make it canon. We're not forcing you to follow these rules. We're just saying. But you could ignore it. Because, great way to get yourself out of trouble, Wizards of the Coast. Sit down with your players and say, okay, this is a thing. Session 0, do you want this? If my bad guys can't critical hit, you can't critical hit. Or if you can critical hit, then so can my bad guys. And leave where the player's there. The players might say, if it means I don't take a critical damage from a bad guy, then I'll not critical hit. I mean, I do enough other things anyways. I mean, backstab, sneak attacks, spiritual strikes, spells. Player characters have enough ways to pad their damage that, rolling 2d4 instead of 1d4 really isn't that much of a difference. Especially if, you're rolling two. I mean, I rolled 2d4 last night on a critical hit with a dagger, and I did 3 points of damage. So, I mean, I suppose. And critical hits and, carrier attacks, like backstab and strikes. I could also say, fine, your actual damage criticals, but the carrier attack, the backstab, the holy strike, that doesn't get the critical. That's just flat out 2d6, 3d6, 8d6. You don't roll. If you critical hit with your backstab, you're not rolling 4d6 instead of 2d6. You're just rolling critical on your dagger does a d4 plus a d4, but your backstab is still 2d6. I could be fine with that, but I'm not fine with the player characters getting a numerical advantage against my bad guys. Which just means that, DM, I'm going to have to either throw more bad guys at you to compensate for the fact that my bad guys can't critical hit anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Or I'm going to have to throw tougher bad guys at you to compensate.
Oh my gosh. Dungeon Masterpiece. I'm playing D&D. Send me a Zoom to my email. I have literally 3 minutes. Oh man. Listen, let's set something up. Hey. Dang, he's only got 3 minutes. I'm in Discord. This sucks. I'm in Discord at the moment. I don't have Zoom. What? Oh, man. Discord me. All right. What's your Discord? All right. How do I Discord? Oh man, I'm excited. All right, I'll tell you what. Hey, No Fun, do me a favor. Call me and then call him. Call me and then call Dungeon Masterpiece. No Fun's going to be our moderator. No Fun's going to moderate. This will be glorious. All right, let's put away our boy for a minute. All right. Damn collab on my first stream. I'm bloody lucky. Dude, I'm so glad my recommendation got you two together. Sadly, I have to head out. Have a good stream. Take it easy, Elko. I'm ready to hear this. Well, he said he's in the middle of a D&D game. We might have to do it later. Hopefully his D&D game ends soon. No fun. Call this man. All right, I'm about to message no fun. The VTD debate. That's exactly what's about to happen. All right, what's up, no fun?
What's up?
All right. I'm ready to talk to Dungeon Masterpiece.
Hold on, I was in the middle of making a drink. You rudely interrupted me.
Oh, man. Are you hammered?
I wish. I'm trying to. That's why I'm...
Man, I'm trying to get there on a Thursday night.
Sure. Hey, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, ain't it?
Your style, you have 5. Thanks, Bloom.
Alrighty, let me,
Rudely
okay,
interrupted.
so let me hop on Discord. Oh, hey, you responded. Call me. So do I add him to the call? Is that what's going on here? What are we trying to do here?
Call Dungeon Masterpiece so that we can talk.
Okay, how
the same way you called me. Like add him
You
to
called me?
the. Are you sure you're not drunk yet?
Did you not call me just now?
No, you called me.
There's no way.
Bro, are you kidding me?
I wish I was drunk right now. Close the notification. How the frick do I? I've never done this before.
All right, chat. It says CW3 cleric made. This is no fun, not Masterpiece, by the way.
All right, let me do this on my phone then.
All right, he said he's calling you. Gosh, man, it's like, bro, no fun. No fun is hammered. All right, no fun's hammered. listen. I'm gonna show you. Look, he started the call. All right, he started that call. All right, I'm not losing my mind. He started that call. Rolling a nat 20 on Discording. Chad, I'm already like forgetting what, like, I almost want to watch the video again just to get all our point. But he'll just fill me in. It's fine. My notepad at the ready. Dungeon Masterpiece will fill us in. Join now. Oh, here we go. Okay, I see it. All right, here we go.
Hello?
I'm here.
Steely?
What's up, buddy?
I don't have a blazer on. I need to go get my blazer. Do what? No, I mean, do. Are we live right now?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so listen, I just found your channel today. Like it was just recommended to me. And all I saw was your OneDND take, which I feel like was a bit out there. But I do like your presentation. But I want to talk to you about your take.
Okay.
All right. So first thing I want to ask you is right at the beginning of the video, you said that Wizards is migrating more towards a digital focus. Like that's going to be the focus of
Absolutely
everything. All right. Tell me about that.
So if you go and look at their past 3, if you go and look at Hasbro's past 3 annual reports, one of the things that they keep harping on is how much money they're spending. And we're talking like multi-million-dollar investment in digital assets. So obviously the bulk of that is Baldur's Gate 3, right?
Okay.
But they're also talking about migrating D&D Beyond into their own ecosystem, the investment into the VTT, and integrating the D&D Beyond experience into their new VTT. So when you have all of this money, I mean, a multi-million-dollar project pays for a lot of development teams. Like $250,000 will pay for 3 months worth of development for a team of 5,
Okay.
right? So when you have that much money going into these projects, I would imagine Baldur's Gate has probably got 50 to 75 developers on it. And I work in IT, so I can just spitball numbers like this. I have a somewhat understanding of how much money and how much effort all this shit takes. Can I curse on your stream, by the way?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. It's funny you should say that. I'm IT as well. It's great.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm a data engineer. So, you know, when you see these kinds of numbers getting flubbed around, and you see the kind of development work that's being done, you just have a sixth sense, if you've been in the industry long enough, of what's actually happening here.
Okay.
And there is no way that you can justify to shareholders that you are a publishing company who predominantly prints books for print and suddenly pivot to a multi-million-dollar project in order to make all these digital, basically to create a digital footprint out of nothing. Like D&D basically had nothing until they purchased, the D&D brand had nothing until it purchased D&D Beyond, right? As far as a digital footprint. So you can't justify that behavior to shareholders unless your entire business model is going to be focused on that. And part of that strategy, as far as I can tell, if you look at Fortnite, if you look at Roblox, if you look at any game, Raid Shadow Legends, if you look at anything that has microtransactions in it, it's an extremely affordable way to entice players to get into spending money on stuff that they otherwise wouldn't, right? Because like right now, only 1/5 of the entire Dungeons and Dragons community is spending money, and that's the Dungeon Master. Well, if you migrate this whole system to a virtual experience and you expose the players to microtransactions where they can buy avatars instead of miniatures, then it's the writing's on the wall for this. Like this is not a difficult decision to make. This is cakewalk that has been done with Roblox. It's been done with Mojang. It's been done with Raid Shadow Legends. Like this is minting money basically. So does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. I want to kind of unpack that a little bit. So the first one that I want to jump on is only the DM spends money on products. I feel like the players will invest pretty heavily, maybe in different things.
They will in a virtual space.
You don't think players buy a lot of physical products? You think they have, like, I have definitely been in a group where one person brings everything, but it's not always necessarily the DM. But you believe that the DM provides all of the physical stuff, and then the party just kind of flocks to that with their stacks, for example.
I'm not saying that the DM buys all of it. I'm saying that, and partially this is my anecdotal experience.
Okay.
But I mean,
mine as well.
A lot of experience playing D&D. I have never seen a player have entire walls of bookshelves, like people who are predominantly players. I've never seen a player have bookshelves of D&D or RPG books. I've never seen that be a thing. I have multiple times, over 50 times, people who play as dungeon masters, they have an entire wall of bookshelves filled with D&D books. Okay. So, I mean, I would love to see more hard data on that. That is an anecdotal experience.
Yeah, mine's anecdotal as well. I know. So when I first started playing, there was one guy that was a player. He hated DMing, never DM'd, but he was the one that brought the tub. He had like one of those big tubs full of 3.5 books, and he was the one that provided the books, and then somebody else ran. But it's definitely anecdotal. We would definitely need some evidence on that one. I do agree that they would have to invest more money because it's hard to pump money into a tabletop setting. Digital has so much more going for it. So I want to see if we agree on this. Magic the Gathering is mostly physical. That's where a majority of the fan base is. Magic the Gathering is mostly physical, but they do have a presence in digital with MTG Arena.
Yes.
Do you think, well, first, let's see. Do you think that Wizards had to invest an equal amount of resources into Magic the Gathering Arena to get that going?
No.
As they did with D&D Beyond?
No. Oh, well, as they did with D&D Beyond or with the VTT?
Do you think that there is similarities between D&D Beyond Virtual Tabletop and MTG Arena as far as resources put in?
Okay, help me understand exactly what you're saying.
So
are you asking me that when you say the VTT, we're talking about the pre-alpha thing that is not released yet, correct?
Correct. Well,
okay.
Well, I'm talking about like when they released the Dungeons, the D&D Beyond Virtual Tabletop. I think that it's going to be similar to MTG Arena, and I don't necessarily believe that Wizards thinks that the MTG Arena or wants digital Magic the Gathering to take over. I think they would prefer physical, but I will acknowledge that physical has a more collector is an investment, whereas D&D doesn't necessarily have that. You can sell Magic cards. You can't really hoard collectibles in the same way as Magic the Gathering. So do you think that it's a similar as far as investment and resources?
As far as the development cost to create Magic the Gathering Arena?
Right, because you mentioned like the amount of money they'd have to pour into it to make this work. And I'm in my mind, I'm comparing that to MTG Arena.
So I would say that it doesn't. Simply because effectively, MTG Arena requires a team of 5 developers and a few analysts or game writers could create MTG Arena. That is a much smaller lift because all it effectively is a rules engine that you put cards into that you already have the artwork for, right? And the amount of actual coding that would need to go into that is quite minimal. Really, you just have to have a database of the cards and how they interact with each other. So that requires some lift, but it's not the same kind of like you don't have to worry about like a 3D physics engine. You don't have to worry about managing Unreal. You don't have to worry about there's far more stuff that would go into the VTT to make that a reality. Right, exactly. So I like, is there effort there? Yes, but I don't think it's. I think it would take 5 times as many developers to get the VTT up and running as it would be to keep the Magic the Gathering Arena.
All right, my next question is: do you think the amount of revenue that D&D Beyond Virtual Tabletop brings in will match or surpass Arena?
That's interesting. I would have to look at the size of the player base. I think on a per player, because forgive me for not being too well versed on MTG. I haven't played in 20 years. I got out in Tempest Block. But I think from a per player standpoint, I think it would be roughly the same. Because what a booster box costs, or a booster pack costs, what, $5, something like that. An avatar for 6 months worth of play.
Arena has a lot of those microtransactions that you mentioned. It has like the cosmetics. You can have like a little pet next to your avatar. You can change your avatar to a famous character. There's like a lot of those microtransactions that we're all concerned about for the D&D Beyond Virtual Tabletop. And believe me, I know it's coming.
That kind of stuff is going to be there. And honestly, if MTG is making that kind of money off of microtransactions now, MTG just set the benchmark. That's the goal to hit, right? Mm-hmm. Like D&D is going to be perceived as a failure by Hasbro, or the VTT will be perceived as a failure by Hasbro if it can't match those numbers. So
you think so? Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean that on a per player basis. Like if the VTT can't squeeze $10 every 3 months, $15 every 3 months off of a player, it's not doing its job. They need better marketing within the app.
I don't know which part of that I disagree with. Whether that's the amount Arena's bringing in, or whether or not that's the amount the
and that's a
tabletop brings in.
hyperbolic figure. I'll grant you that. But you know, I don't see creating a vehicle to dish out microtransactions. Like even D&D Beyond right now, you can purchase a feat by itself for what, $3, something like that, $1.99.
Yeah. We're already getting there. I think it's going to be similar to Hero Forge, where you buy the miniatures and assets and all that stuff.
Sure.
Okay. So moving on. Okay. Yeah. I think we pretty much.
So did you have any other questions?
Yes, I do.
I'm gonna flip everybody around right now, by the way.
Okay.
Can we flip the camera? Everybody, this is my D&D party. I'm currently playing D&D. We're taking a break, and I've got 2 players that have COVID. That's why they're on a monitor in the back. So everybody's playing right now.
Hey, everybody.
Anyway, yeah, I got enough time for like 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay, next question. All right, I'll try to keep them quick then. My next question is: You mentioned that with the focus on Dungeons on the D&D Beyond virtual tabletop, that it would start taking away from custom third-party third-party websites like DriveThruRPG, DM's Guild. That's going to start kind of sucking the life out of them when Wizards starts trying to make themselves the go-to place. So I'm thinking that those websites will expand by being able to develop resources for this new virtual tabletop. Perhaps they'll be able to build maps and sell them on DM's Guild, or build maps and sell them on DriveThruRPG, or sell like asset packs. Maybe if they have custom assets, things like that. And you also said that they would take away from other tabletop RPGs. And I think that if D&D was removed from those websites, that other TTRPGs would actually have some breathing room and may actually grow. But it's also possible that the sites would just die outright. So I want to expand on that. So what are your thoughts on those 2 points?
So here's the thing. They've already purchased D&D Beyond, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they've already purchased a back-end software system for handling online transactions. So it only makes sense to me, if you're going to be dealing with microtransactions, if you're already buying digital assets for characters, why would you not also be rolling your event tree programs of your adventures into that system as well? So if you're handling everything natively within your own VTT, why do you need one bookshelf? And if anything, they may just purchase that section of one bookshelf out from underneath them and say, hey, you're going to give me DM's Guild and here's the check. And they're going to integrate that into the VTT experience.
So
once they do that,
real quick introduction.
All of the marketing that goes into Dungeons and Dragons, because remember, they're owned by Hasbro. So if you go to Hasbro headquarters, they've got like mock-up stores of what their stuff looks like in a grocery store, in a Walmart, in a bookstore, Barnes and Noble, whatever. They've got mock-ups of all of this stuff so they can see what their product looks like lined up against competitors. Just the fact that they have contracts with all these big box stores, that they can just stick their products there. Like D&D is now selling self-help books, for crying out loud. You know,
books.
So, and that's not a joke. Like, go Google it, D&D self-help book. I can't remember the name of it, but they missed a golden opportunity to name it, like, you know, Critical Success or something like that. At any rate, you know, when you have that much marketing potential with Hasbro, why would you even afford any opportunity for any kind of competitor to enter the scene? Because the last thing you want to have happen is the 4th edition fiasco that, because they didn't have that market dominance, allowed Pathfinder to come onto the scene. Why would you even create an ecosystem where that is a possibility again?
I think they would do more harm than good to themselves in an attempt to isolate themselves that way. But we may have to agree to disagree on that one. What I'm concerned with is so people that want to create their own adventures, like in the DM's Guild, people that write their own adventures and sell them on the DM's Guild, you believe that that's going to go away? Like, that's not even...
So the people writing their own adventures is obviously not going to stop. What I think is going to happen, because if like I put up a poll on my website and I was actually kind of shocked at the numbers. Roughly a third of Dungeons and Dragons players now play on virtual tabletop.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a game writer and you're trying to write content, not content that you want to just write, but that you want to have visibility, and the VTT market is expanding, and you see that, as a writer, I'm not going to write an adventure as a PDF. I'm going to write it inside the VTT ecosystem, whatever that looks like. If that's programming events, if that's doing some voice acting for NPCs that players can click on, like how far involved are we going to go here? And some of this is future casting a little bit, sure. But I don't see a platform where you can sell a PDF surviving when VTT has been expanding so much, and you can just create all the maps, you can create all the assets, maybe even add in a little bit of voice acting for like hover over stuff for PCs that are messing around in the game.
Sure. I love
whatever it is. All this kind of whiz-bang stuff is stuff 10-year-olds are going to love. The extremely young Gen Z, they're going to love this stuff. So why would you create a PDF when you're going to get the most visibility by programming an adventure in the VTT ecosystem? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And if you're doing that, then that content is never going to show up as a PDF because it's just not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze to put on a site like DM's Guild if it survives.
Okay. So I think we have an example of that already with Roll20. When Roll20 started to grow, it provided a virtual tabletop, and the DM's Guild and DriveThruRPG adapted by providing resources for Roll20 specifically. So you can go to DriveThruRPG and you can get Fantasy Grounds material, you can get Roll20 material. I believe that those websites are going to adapt to the environment with the virtual tabletop for D&D Beyond and start selling maybe the voice lines that you recommended or that you mentioned, or the 3D maps.
That possibility hinges on Wizards of the Coast having an open API for them to be able to submit that material to Roll20, because Roll20 opened an API for that purpose because they knew people were hungry for it. Does that make sense? So
yes.
if the VTT has an open API, then that will happen. Sure. I agree with that 100%. But the question is it worth it for Wizards of the Coast to spend time creating a public API so that they can work with competitors? Maybe. I don't see it happening, though. I honestly see this as a power play to lock down on the fact that the open game license exists.
That is interesting. Yeah, I'm in the complete opposite camp. I believe that the open game, the OGL, is going to expand from this. I do not think it's going to get more restrictive. I honestly think if they make it more restrictive, they're going to push players into the arms of other game systems if they do that. But I mean that may be tinfoil hat. I think we're both really.
I agree with you. For seasoned gamers, I absolutely agree with you. And I think that's something that, I kept saying the word generation and even having those silly jump cuts in my video. I think that's something that people aren't quite clicking with yet, is that you and I, if we get pissed off, we're just going to go play another RPG. I'll go play Mothership or Traveler and never think about it ever again.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about are the 10-year-olds who have no idea and no ability to even understand that other RPGs even exist.
That would be interesting.
That was the thesis statement of my video, is that the next generation is going to have the problem. It's not us. Like, yeah, we can
we got this.
We can just screw up and be done with the problem. Fine, we'll go play some other RPG. It's the 10-year-olds who don't even know the right things to Google to go find another RPG.
All right. Yeah. So it's up to Will Wizards of the Coast allow third party, and will the younger generation branch out if they do? That's really what it comes down to. I look forward to finding out. Don't let me hold up your D&D game any longer. It was fun.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. And thank you for my players. I think I'm going to spin the camera around one more time. So everybody in the chat, say thank you to my players for allowing me to jump on this call real fast.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Feely.
Later, y'all. Well, that was fun. So he seems like a really cool guy. I like him. He's a bit insane. No, I'm not gonna say that. I don't agree. I still don't agree with him. But I definitely see where he's coming from. That was Dungeon Masterpiece, by the way. Dungeon Masterpiece. What a fun chat that was. What a fun chat. Go check out Dungeon Masterpiece. Go give him a sub. Be nice. He was so respectful. I want you all to do the same. Yeah, he was very fun. He was very fun to talk to. I hopped in for 5 seconds. I loved that. You understand sided of the arguments? That's really cool. So what do you guys think? I'm going to pass it off to you. What did you guys think of that debate? I think that was I don't know any other books, I'll be honest. What did you guys think of that debate? He's like that kind of insane genius. Yeah, I think he's a bit out there, but there may be a nugget. There may be a nugget of truth to it. He has great videos on geopolitics for D&D. You never debate me, feels bad. Dude, we debate all the time. We just haven't debated on stream yet. I agree with you, Sam. I don't think physical games are going anywhere. Very well put. Sam says he wants to talk to someone and forces poor Mr. No Fun to make his command. Half my party are girls and they play on monitors with COVID. Gotcha. A bit outlandish, but good. We'll see. We'll see. I think the big one is like, is Wizards going to restrict third party? That's really the thing. I think the biggest thing that's like, because that's kind of the foundation of our he wears a suit and speaks the language of business. Yes, he does. It was a fun interview. Was that an interview or was it a debate? I feel like that was a debate, but I don't know. Could be an interview. Weird question, Steele, but what do you think of the D&D cookbook names? Post them again for me. Was more of an interview? Okay. Interview? I gotcha. I'll have to be more aggressive then if we want to make it a debate. I have to start attacking his character. No, I'm joking. It was an interview. All right, if you say so. Is there a book that covers materials like different metals? Interviews are better than debates. Debating in front of his whole D&D party. I call it a debater view. Just time limit for both parties. Crushes dreams. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Tasha's Guide to Pizza Making and Xanathar's Guide to Dragon Cuisine. I think those two are dumb, to be completely honest. That sounds more like an actual... See, I thought you were talking about dishes, not an actual cookbook. You didn't really have time for a real debate? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we were neither of us were really prepared for a debate, so I didn't have like the numbers. I would have really loved to expand on like the MTG Arena thing. Because Wizards definitely invested heavily in MTG Arena, and they definitely get some huge returns for MTG Arena. But there's no way MTG Arena is outperforms, or there's no way that their fan base is mostly. There's probably like a lot of overlap, but I think most MTG players are physical. The Real D&D Cookbook, Heroes Feast, I own that book. I hope someone asked the game devs to add a mechanic for bleed damage. Cooking stream when? Wait, there's a real cookbook? Yeah, it's called there's a real cookbook. It's called Hero's Feast. I've got it. It's in my kitchen. It's worth it. I'm going to tell you, it's worth it. I loved it. I loved it. It's only like $20. I got it for a Secret Santa one time. This is my D&D group had like a secret, or my friend group had like a Secret Santa, and I brought this. Or not Secret Santa, but where you trade where you like fight over gifts. Yeah, Heroes Feast, the official D&D cookbook. How much for a signed book, Sam? You got to meet me at a con. Got to go run D&D for some teenagers. Have fun, Sam, and chat. See y'all tomorrow. Take it easy. Does it have good food? Yes. White Elephant. Yeah, that's the game I'm trying to think of. It's called different names, like Nasty Christmas, White Elephant, Dirty Santa, or whatever. I wouldn't Google that if I were you. You might not get what you're looking for. All right, chat. Do we want to finish? I actually want to. Speaking of insanity,
My bad guys can't critical hit anymore.
let's watch one more video and then we'll call it.
And here's the other loophole I like, especially after playing through Call of the Netherdeep and seeing some of the special abilities NPCs have that player characters don't have in Call of the Netherdeep. You could say, fine. Okay. I am perfectly happy that on a natural 20, instead of rolling 1d6, you get to roll 2d6 and then add your modifiers. Numerically, it's not going to be that much of a difference. Okay? Just chances are, on a 1 through 6 chance, you doing enough damage to make the critical worthwhile is slim. I mean, you're probably going to roll a 3 and a 2. So 5 points instead of 3 points, plus your plus 2 damage isn't going to make that much damage to my 80 hit point troll. So fine. I'm okay with you player characters getting to critical and my bad guys don't get to critical anymore. Because now, and I'm following Call of the Netherdeep, so if Matt Mercer does it, it must be okay. How about
He's so salty.
your bad guys get to do something else on a natural 20 instead of extra damage? Because if I have a choice between rolling 2d6 instead of 1d6 or doing something far worse, I'm going to choose to do far worse. I don't know. Here's some examples. How about on a natural 20, a monster that is larger than the player character gets to swallow the player character whole? Natural 20, shark swallows you whole. Natural 20, giant frog swallows you whole. Natural 20, what is this thing? The great worm of Dune rises up and swallows you whole. That's one. Another one could be
He sounds
special
fun.
effects. Instead of doing extra damage on a natural 20, I get to do something else, like knock you over. Wolves, natural 20, knock over. You have to spend an action. How about the undead? Think of all the fun things you could add to undead and demons and spellcasters and cultists. How about instead of double damage on a natural 20, my undead paralyzes you or drains a level? Or something even more frightening. On a natural 20,
Drains a level.
My Wraith gives you a black wound. You have a festering wound that can't be healed by normal means. And every day, you're taking damage because of that natural 20 and that festering, necrotic damage. How about on a natural 20, my dragon gets to get an extra attack? Or
It concerns me how excited he gets when he starts talking about how he's going to torture his players. It's concerning. I want you to watch, like, if you watch this, just watch the tone shift between like, oh, Wizards is doing this, but let me tell you what I'm going to do to my players. Wizards has the audacity to take monster crits from me. I'm about to swallow every player whole.
Or on a natural 20, my
I'm gonna
troll
drain
gets
your
rend
levels.
you and do another bite attack if it rolled a natural 20. There's a lot of things that you could use to replace rolling 2d6. Because again, if my choice for a critical hit is 2d6 plus 2 as opposed to 1d6 plus 2.
You just hit level 5. We'll see about
on a natural
that.
20, my giant frog swallows you whole. I'm going for swallow you whole. It's much more cinematic. It's much more impactful. It's much more frightening. And remember, the player characters agreed to it. Okay, You don't want my bad guys to do special things on natural 20s, then you have to not be able to do special things. At which point, my history has shown me more often than not the players will be, all right. Because remember my gunfighter, example, or the alchemist example that I've told. I had a game and a guy wanted to bring in a gunfighter and he was all guns. And I would guess he was expecting me to respond negatively because he was prepared for a fight. So after, 5 minutes of listening to him talk about guns,
I think we're a long way from OneDND at this
he
point.
was ready for that fight. My response was, okay. And he just didn't know how to respond. You can have guns, but then my bad guys get to have guns. So if you have access to guns and gunpowders and that technology now exists in my world,
I agree with that.
Yeah, my bad guys have access to it too. And
I agree with
what?
that.
I have more bad guys than you have bullets. So
I don't agree with that. You lost me right there.
I kind of like the idea of 20 orcs carrying rifles and marching on a village. So sure, yeah, we can do that. At which point the guy just said, oh, yeah, you know what? I don't know if I want to be a gunfighter. Maybe I'll just play something else instead. Because they didn't like the idea of him having something
What's the
special
link?
than if everybody else had it. But
OneDND
it makes sense.
playtest.
If you've got a gun and that technology exists, that's the whole point of guns, right? That
I don't want to
everybody could use
send
them.
hate his way. I don't
Didn't
want to
really require any special training. It
Do not go harass this person. Do not.
leveled the battlefield. That's why it won the West, because we had guns and the other people didn't. So I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, guns level the playing field. So if you can have a gun, then my bad guys can have a gun. If you can have a combat wheelchair, then my bad guys can have combat wheelchairs. And I don't know, a motorcycle gang of skeletons riding combat wheelchairs sounds kind of cool.
He says as he sends us a link, somebody asked for the link to the video. No, do not wink back. Do not. If I see, I'm just going to say this. If I see somebody harassing him, I'm banning you on my channel.
So. Oh no, but then I don't want that gun anymore. Because if I'm not special, then nobody else should be special. So, okay. If you get to
You can
critical,
disagree.
Then my bad guys get to critical. If my bad guys don't get to critical, then you don't get to critical. More often than not, they're going to be like, yeah.
So listen, like, he's got a point. I understand where he's coming from. I agree. It's just the way he says it. It's like, I shall disagree respectfully. Thank you. He's just saying it in such a way where it's like,
fine with that nobody getting to critical.
It's concerning.
I mean, nobody gets to critical in the Monday night game I'm in. Bad guys don't get to do it. Good guys don't get to do it. And natural 20 just means you automatically hit. And
Goblin
everybody's
Biker
fine
Gang
with
sounds
that.
cool. Yeah, it does. What's up, Zart?
But if I have to stick to the only player characters get to roll critical hits, not the bad guys. And remember again, Kendrick said DMs don't get to critical hit. Not bad guys. Not the bad guys don't get to critical hit.
Such a horrible take.
It's just a weird phrasing. But, okay, fine. If I am running OneDND, or if I'm running 5e, and if that comes up to the point where I'm going to say, okay, do you want to implement this rule where player characters get to critical hit, but my NPCs don't, my bad guys don't? You know they're going to say yes. At which point I'm going to say, but instead of critical hitting, following the example of Call of the Netherdeep and St. Mercer, my bad guys get to do something else on a natural 20. And I'm not going to tell you what it is until you run into them. Because I know you guys have got, a whole smorgasbord of things that you can add on to your characters to make them do more damage and be more effective. I mean, look at Holy Strike from a Paladin or Backstab from a Rogue, and that's not even counting magic and other shenanigans and flanking and other things. So sure, yeah, you can have that. Here's my gift to you, player characters. You get to do the one thing that my bad guys can't. But in exchange, my bad guys might do something else on a natural 20. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of you being swallowed whole by a giant frog. I definitely like the ideas of undead doing like black wounds and other sort of really frightening crap. So, okay, Todd Kendrick, we're going to see where you're going with this, because remember, again, this is still the early stages of the playtest, so that's probably going to change. And Wizards of the Coast lies. So, yeah. I understand that why people
just dripping with vitriol. I don't know, maybe I'm reading between the lines, but man, I just get nothing but I get nothing but hate towards Matt Mercer, Todd Kendrick, and Wizards of the Coast from this.
upset about it, but here my thinking is like,
and
fine.
Players.
Okay, I'm happy with this. Fine. Because now this opens the door for me getting to do things far worse than an extra D6 of damage. I'm okay with that. I am the OG GM. If you appreciate the nonsense that's coming out of my mouth, let me know. If you have...
All right, OG. All right, OG GM Adventures, thank you. I do not agree, but God bless you for having your opinion. I'm going to see this man on a crit crab story. To be fair, players are the worst. The DM gets multiple monsters that can do so much that the players can't. So does that mean the PC can become a lich? That guy was something else. He had some opinions. I mean, he may be onto something about a crit doing something special other than bonus damage. Yeah, I mean, he wrapped up a good message and just like maybe that's his brand. I don't know. I haven't watched him. But he wrapped up a good message in just like vitriol and hate. It was like, man, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to get through just trying to like, I mean, I hear your message, but man, you're making me not want to like, you're making me question myself. Use the random table. Competitive DMs can be fun, but it's more old school than modern D&D. As a DM, I love my players. I'm okay with not being able to crit if it means an increase in recharge abilities, like it's implied. Man, I want so badly for recharge abilities to be awesome. You want hate from a big D&D YouTuber? Watch DM Layer. Maybe crits inflict status effects instead of damage. No, you were stupid idea. No, you were onto something there. Crits doing stuff. I'm okay with crits doing stuff. Like I said, I'm okay with his message. He just delivered it in such a hateful way. Don't mummies get an ability that kills a PC? Yeah, mummy rot. Mummy rot's pretty tough. It's hard. I mean, it's easy to kind of avoid though, but it's one of those like, oh, it's easy to avoid, but once you get it, Lord help you. I'd love for monsters to have crits that break bones and start bleeds rather than extra damage. I can tell you at my table, as from my position right now, monster crits aren't going anywhere. But maybe. Depending on how awesome the recharge is. Just give all monsters vorpal blades, man. That's all. That's the message. Listen, if I could quote my new favorite dungeon master, DM, I forgot his name. DM, oh, I lost him. OG GM. If I could quote my new favorite, if you're gonna take my crits away, then we're gonna do something else. My monsters are gonna do other stuff. Okay, I'm going to get off here. What a great stream. We got to have the man. On. We got to have some very interesting takes. You know, I've been asking for somebody to disagree with me so that we could have like a really in-depth conversation. I'm glad we finally got that tonight. And oh boy, did we. Came back just in time. Welcome back, Ivan. We're calling it. I'm I want to debate. You choose a bad day. What days are you available? Let's schedule something. No fun. Let's schedule something. That was a good stream. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm late. What's up, big old PP? I saw your comment about the story. Let's schedule something. No fun. I got D&D on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We can do something Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or Sunday. Throw something together. Level 1 flying is still not good, so good night. I agree. Well, hold on. I think level 1 flying is good. I just don't think it's OP. I don't think it's ban worthy. I don't think it's that good. All right, I'm out of here, chat. I'm gonna go pet. Y'all want to see Homer before I go? Look at this. Look at Homer right now. See him? Just letting it all hang out. We got him. Being precious. Trying to focus without my glasses. There we go. He just laid out. The flabbiest boy. All right, I'm out of here, y'all. Have a good night. Modesty. He is out. He is out like a light. All right, everybody. I'm out of here. Y'all have a good night. See y'all tomorrow for our last D&D, our last run of this week's chapter. Peace.